Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series in officially licensed cars engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
As well. What a move to the 48. Oh, look at this. And onto the straight they come.
Brilliant move there from number 40 to make it through. That left-hander sliding up the inside, going up now over Hawthorne Hill, down Pilgrim's Drop, and it's brilliant stuff here at Brands Hatch.
For the upcoming right-hander, brake 30 meters later and ease off the pressure.
Turning green in the Americas. Europe is waiting on the other side. SRI brothers in the McLaren machines, taking on the world for the transatlantic ride. 2 weeks of waiting just to feel the heat. iRacing legends where the titans meet. iRacing legends where the titans meet. Where the titans meet. SRI, speed and the glory. SRI, write the whole story. Transatlantic Trophy, the prize is in sight. McLaren thunder under broadcast light. GT3 and the GT4 go head to head. Hear the engine screaming until the sun is dead. Hold the phone, turn the volume up. Broadcasting legend Paul Walsh is in the booth. Every lap is a showcase, every corner is the truth. Winning trophies, winning prizes, racing for the crown. The fastest sim racers in the whole world, no backing down. SRI, Transatlantic Trophy, let the broadcast begin. SRI!
Hello, good evening and welcome ladies and gentlemen to another round of absolutely intense and exciting racing action in the SimRacing International Transatlantic Trophy Season 1 as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing, proudly powered by none other than trophi.ai, and of course this is a Motorsport UK eSports approved championship, one of the finest out that there is, and well, the action could not come thicker and faster. Today it's round number 2 of the championship as our drivers continue their tour of the US of A in the SI America Cup. Last time out, of course, we open up with an absolute flyer in Indianapolis, and we have made our way all the way to the southeastern tip of the US of A for the Florida State Circuit. Not quite Daytona, the one that everyone knows about, but the Miami International Autodrome, the circuit that everyone should know about. A young circuit born in 2022 with the purposes of bringing Formula 1 to the grounds around the Miami Dolphins' home, which is the Hard Rock Stadium. It has since gone on over the last 4 years to extend its array of use cases, not just to the premier open wheel racing series in the world, but also likes a many another series, including Porsche Cup US of A, and perhaps more pertinent to this championship, the McLaren Trophy America. With its mixture of 19 corners as dispersed across 3.36 miles and a street course that runs across a parking lot around the stadium and a few public roads, it is a street circuit which brings together such a wide array of corner sequences and straights, you'd be forgiven for thinking it was an open racing course. For our drivers, this is a highly technical test, and it means that their abilities in qualifying to deliver a perfect lap will be added to with regards to the demands that come in the race, or to negotiate a street circuit where the width for the road will be narrow at certain points, wide at others, and it's picking the perfect time to be able to make a critical overtake and also make sure you don't get caught up in traffic of another class. But who exactly will lead the way in Miami, and who may find themselves floundering in the seas around? Well, that's what we're here to find out today as we bring you all the racing action as it unfolds live from circuit side. Indeed, you're tuning in today via one or two media platforms for your viewing pleasure, but regardless of the media channel, you'll be getting the same broadcast available to you. Firstly, we have the broadcast available on the SimRacing International YouTube channel. You can be tuning in via youtube.com and search for SRI or SimRacing International. And hello to you guys and girls tuning in via that approach, including, of course, none other than Katie Eames, who we give a big shout out to as always, tuning on the Verano eSports team. I'm particularly Russell Fowler and Kevin Smith. We also say hello there to Essex Webify, who's tuning on another, and Charlie Devlin, and also Ryan Stringer. And we say hello to Craig Tillotson, who's tuning on the Verano eSports team today. But of course, you can be catching this broadcast as well on Motorsport UK eSports' YouTube channel as it continues to grow. A new YouTube channel, and why not give it a go? That's at youtube.com and search for Motorsport UK eSports. And hello to you guys and girls tuning in via that approach. But regardless of which channel you tune in via, your hosting and commentary will be provided by myself. My name is Paul Walsh. I'll be in your commentary booth for the entirety of the season. And as we make our way into this second round, we've got plenty to dissect from our season opener. So let's get to it, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, qualifying is underway in the background, and we don't want to miss a trick. But of course, as we make our way into this round, first and foremost, we must always give a big shout out to Motorsport UK's eSports division, not just for recognising SimRacing International as a recommended community, but going the distance and giving us their stamp of approval as the approved championship this is, the SimRacing International Transatlantic Trophy Season 1, and a huge thank you to Motorsport UK eSports for working with us to deliver this premier championship for you guys and girls tuning in, and of course, our drivers out there going for some of the biggest prizes we've ever offered at SimRacing International. We're very proud to be working together on this, and of course, if you do want to find out more about Motorsport UK eSports, do check out their official website. Go on Google search and just search for Motorsport UK or Motorsport UK eSports and you find out more. And of course, you've got the QR code on screen there if you want to know more about joining the SimRacing International community, where it be the Discord, indeed the main place you can go to, and therefore get yourself on the grid in any of our series, including this one, or at least on the reserve list. But again, a huge thank you there to Motorsport UK eSports division for approving this championship, and we're very grateful for their continued collaboration as we bring the Transatlantic Trophy to life and make sure the racing stays absolutely on the right path. But of course, with that, we must also give a big shout out to none other than our sponsors for this championship, trophi.ai being our premier title sponsor. And of course, do check out their free 7-day trial. All the details at their website. That's at www.trophi.ai. If you're looking to up your game in the world of sim racing with AI assisted coaching, so the very finest out, they can take you all the way from a rookie to the very best there is on the iRacing simulator platform, the premier sim racing platform available on PC, on which we are hosting this championship. Also, a big shout out to our trophy provider, design manufacturer, and none other that is Kamei Modern Technology, and a huge thank you to them for producing our incredible trophies, including our standard Black Edition trophies and the absolutely unique trophies to our championship winners come the end of the season, whether in our Drivers' Championships or our Teams' Championships. Also, a big shout out to Sim Coach, where you can unlock your true potential as a sim racing driver, whereby their person coaching is absolutely top notch. And we're relying on them to provide us with the fixed setups for our drives, whether in GT3 or GT4 cars this season. And a huge thank you to Sim Coach for getting on board for the Transatlantic Trophy and and providing said setups. We couldn't do it without them. And also must give a big shout out to Mr. Hedge Photography. Of course, Mr. Hedge, some of the premier photography ever provided on the sim racing platform, available from Adam Hedgecock. And do go check out his official website if you want to know more how you can crystallise your perfect moments in sim racing through some of the best photography there is, all provided by Mr. Hedge. And a huge thank you to all of our sponsors who enable us to make this championship happen. But of course, as we say thank you to our sponsors, we say thank you to an absolutely brilliant calendar as well. And let's start to come up to speed with what happened last time out. Of course, it's time for round number 2. It is Wednesday the 26th of August, and we've made our way to the state of Florida for the Miami Grand Prix circuit as it's formerly known. 90 minutes of racing is on the schedule today, the first of our 4 endurance race rounds of the season, but of course it is also the first of our 4 mixed conditions rounds, which means in layman's terms, rain will be seen at some point during the day. It is a guarantee, however long the rain is, however, and also when the rain arrives, we have timeline, and we'll talk a little bit more about it later on, but it won't always be the same from round to round. We do have mixed weather conditions. Last time out in round number 1, we got the championship formally underway back on the 12th of August at the Indianapolis road course. And what exactly did we get to see in the other state of Indiana, and the first location ever to refer to itself as a speedway? Well, over 60 minutes of racing, it was quite the thriller across both classes. But let's start with GT3. 26 drivers made the way onto the grid, and in qualifying, it was a close shootout for pole position between the sim coach team pair of what was Marley Joff and Andy Dawson, whereby Joff was able to take it by 800ths of a second, and behind the all sim coach front row, Charlie Devlin was able to take third place, 1300ths adrift, with a comfortable 0.2 of a second gap to Matthew Croft, who started fourth. Late improvements from both Russell Fowler and Christian Ablas have placed them on the third row of the grid, and Jerry Ireland seemed to struggle to find clear track to get a lap in, only managing 8th, but that became very important in the race. Speaking of which, Joff nailed the start at the beginning of the race, and therefore held on to lead on lap number 1 and gradually built a gap to the rest of the field, as Devlin meanwhile definitely proved to be the formidable opponent to Andy Dawson, and was able to move into second place on the open lap, but then had Dawson breathing down his neck for the remainder laps that were to follow. Then we also did see a little bit further down the order, a poor start for Russell Fowler dropped him from 5th to 9th, and a further incident on lap number 6 saw him fall all the way to 18th place. Now he would recover to 12th place, how it wasn't a result he was hoping for, and Ben Bennyworth also had a tumultuous start, going from 12th to 10th on the open lap, only to fall back to 14th on lap 3, and would go on to finish in 6th place in with a solid effort. But the battle of the top 3, i.e. Joff, Devlin, and also Dawson, saw 2 major developments happen very close together, and it was both for the sim coach drivers, where on lap 16 there was an incident for Dawson, and that forced him to pit prematurely, and there was a technical retirement 2 laps later for Marley Joff on lap number 18 that handed the lead to Devlin. And so Charlie Devlin would break away, as meanwhile Dawson had to try and recover what he could in terms of points out of the race. However, the battle for second place then became the priority, and it was a race-long endeavour between Joey Ireland and Matthew Croft, with Ireland's pace gradually proving to be the difference versus Croft, who only finished 4.4 seconds behind in the end, albeit it was Ireland was able to outpace him just before the pit stops, and then secured what would be that second place for a faster pit stop. Harvey Wheeler and the recovering Andy Dawson completed the top 5. But we must give a special mention to Bill Daniels, having a very unpredictable race, going from 13th to finish 8th, and along the way he rose and fell through the ranks like a sinusoidal wave. He had a lot of race pace, however he had no luck on circuit. So your top 3 in GT3 is Charlie Devlin, who took the first win of the season ahead of Jerry Ireland, and Matthew Croft then rounded out the podium. But what about GT4? Well, again, 26 drivers made the way to Indianapolis, and in qualifying, it was the story of Marinko Jordanovski, who would take pole position by just shy of 2 attempts, ahead of Jack Wyborn, with Wyborn setting his best time early in the session, compared to Jordanovski, who would set his best time right at the end of the session, as both struggled to find clear space on track. That theme would continue for other drivers out there, but not quite so for Lewis Johnson, who started 3rd, ahead of Brandon Dyer, and then we did see almost a 1/4 of a second gap there to 5th place, and that was Robin Powney, who would start on the 3rd row, who led a very tight remainder of the top 10, as separated by only 1300ths of a second. And in the race, Marinko Jordanovski would lead the way for the entirety of the race. He had no pressure on him as such, other than to break away early, and so he did. So therefore, it was all about who would finish on the rest of the steps of the podium. And we did see in the end what was Brandon Dyer tried to find a way to make his way all the way onto the second step of the podium, charging through from 4th to 2nd early on, as meanwhile it was difficulty for your 3rd place starter of none other than Lewis Johnson, who fell down the order due to an early incident. However, Brandon Dyer, what he found out was the fact that he was not going to be able to finish 2nd in the end, because Ryan Stringer had aspirations to charge his way through the field after a disappointing qualifying performance. He went all the way from 9th to 3rd by the end of lap number 12, and then he would undercut Brandon Dyer in the pit lane and be able to take 2nd place. So therefore, for Jack Wyborn, it was having to settle for a spot off of the podium, in the end taking home what would be a 5th place finish just behind Robin Pownier, if my memory serves me correctly. And we also got to see some phenomenal performances from other drivers as well, including Joe Glass, who had a somewhat frustrating race to a degree, where lap 2 incident sent him all the way down to the back of the top 15, although he did recover to 8th place in the end. And we also got got to see was Alex Fretwell come through a late spurt of pace for 7th place, just ahead of Glass, and Patrick Hayden was one of the class's biggest gainers, all the way from 21st to 14th, gambling on undercut strategy, which, if he had not had a spin when he left the pit lane, could have seen him take a top 10 of the day. But in the end, your podium was none other than Rinko Jornovsky, Ryan Stringer, and Brandon Dyer, and completing that top 5, it was none other than Robin Powney and Jack Wyborn. But as we now talk about what was, of course, none other than what would be our finishing order, and that, well, we talk a bit more about our calendar, because here we are today at the Miami Grand Prix circuit, and next time out we'll be going back to a 60-minute race in the US state of California, as we'll make our way all the way to the northwestern edge of the country for the Sonoma Grand Prix circuit. But let's talk a little bit more about our host venue for today. It is, of course, the Miami Grand Prix circuit, located right next to the Hard Rock Stadium in the US state of Florida, right near Miami Gardens, one of the sub-cities of Miami, and we can see 3.36 miles in length, or 5.4 kilometers depending on your choice of units. However, what stays the same is the number of corners, 19 in grand total. A fast-flying circuit, no doubt about it, but also with some tight sections, and a huge thank you to iRacing.com, not just for their brilliant simulator, but the absolutely fantastic track maps contained within it. And as we can see, the opening half a lap dominated by sweepers, which see average apex speeds gradually descend, but by the time you get out of turn number 8, it's a long curve straight all the way through the kinks of 9 and 10, all the way up to turn number 11, at which point in the second half lap, it's all about a very tight section of turns 11 through to 16, before going onto an extensive 1 kilometre long back straight. It wouldn't quite be a Herman Tilke designed circuit if it didn't have a 1 kilometre long back straight. However, in this instance, this circuit was not designed by Herman Tilke, it was designed by a separate consortium. However, it definitely took inspiration from Tilke designed circuits, let me tell you that. And as our drivers make the way up towards that turn 17 hairpin, one of the key places where you can expect overtaking action, then make the way for the flat-out sweepers of turns 18 and 19 to complete lap and do it all over again. But the main overtaking opportunities beyond the straights will be at turns 1, 6 through to 8, also at turn number 11 and 16 and 17. But this is definitely going to be one of those circuits whereby when you catch up to traffic in a different class, it could definitely prove to be a winner or breaker when it comes to taking victory. But to add to it all, of course, we need to talk a little bit about our drivers, and in particular who our reserve drivers are for tonight's race. And we've got plenty of reserves going in today, so let's quickly break it down. In the GT4 class, a sim coach, Danny Phillips, is standing in for Robin Powney, who cannot make this round, and so we'll see Robin back in 2 weeks' time. But Danny Phillips stepping up to the plate, and we look forward to seeing what he can do in the McLaren 570S GT4. DXT Motorsport, Dexterous Motorsport's GT3 driver Ross Young, he's going to be stood in for by Simon Quinn, who makes his debut, and I do believe for Simon it's his debut in any SimRacing International series, so good luck to Simon as he makes his debut, and we look forward to seeing what he can do. Sim coached by Glass Tech Racing's GT3 entry, we'll see Andy Dawson stood in for by Leighton Austin, the absolutely established GT3 racing driver, and we look forward to seeing what Leighton can do, taking up some very stiff competition on the grid. And then we do see in GT4, it's MJK Sim Racing, and it'll be a Victor Van Ziest who stands in for Denny Ploger, the favourite of Racing SimRacing International, the Dutchman, replaced by another well-established Dutchman, and Victor, an absolutely brilliant driver out there, and we expect many drivers to be wondering what exactly he may be able to do. Could he go for the win today? Also, MRC 491 will see their GT3 entrant of Ray Howe, stood in for by Martin King, who also makes his own debut in a SimRacing International Series today, so we welcome Martin with warm arms, and make sure that we look forward to seeing what he can do on the grid. And we also have one more reserve to consider, and as Axis Sim Sports with Ashley Brooks Designs, or AB Designs GT4 entrant, where Craig Hewlett is being stood in for by Thomas Pugh, and will Thomas Pugh back on the grid once again, and we look forward to seeing what he can do in the GT4 machine. So that's all you need to know coming into this round with regards to where we are, our circuit and our reserve drivers, and let's make our way to circuit side, ladies and gentlemen, and see how they're getting on with 15 minutes left in qualifying. And as the drivers continue to make the way on around, well, it's looking to be a good day here so far as they all head on the round. Although in terms of that weather, when can we expect the rain to come? Well, the good news is it's not due to come for some time. It will arrive approximately around 35 minutes into the race, and it will go approximately 15 minutes later, if not sooner. It may only last 10 minutes. It is going to be a very short spell of rain that we do see here today in the US state of Florida, and that could definitely put our drivers with a bit of a conundrum, which is, do you try to outlast the rain? It's only light rain that's expected to fall, but as we all know on iRacing, light rain, if it falls for an extended period of time, can lead to the formation of standing water, and slick tyres will not do well on said standing water. Do you essentially come into the pits, put the wet tyres on for a brief moment, or do you try to outlast the weather and save yourself the potential risk of an extra pit stop? Of course, the fact that it's going to arrive around about 35 minutes into the race, perhaps a little bit later, perhaps a little bit earlier, also throws the spanner, which is, if you can save a lot of fuel early on, could you potentially come into the pits, actually change the tyres over, and in doing so, put enough fuel into the car to get to the end. So therefore, if you do need to come back in for a tyre change, it literally just is that. Because keep in mind, of course, that with our machines, GT3 and GT4, the rules and regulations state The fuel goes in first, tyre changes come after, not in parallel. We'll be interested to see what our drivers decide to do there. But speaking of drivers doing things on the circuit right now, here is Marley Joff, currently the provisional pole sitter in GT3, doing a phenomenal job there for 52.360, looking absolutely rapid, no doubt about it, and almost the best part of half a second ahead at Charlie Devlin at the moment. And while we see Charlie make his way around, and as he does so, well, good to see him back for future glass, and we look forward to seeing what he's going to be able to do today after taking that maiden win. Oh, there's a bit of contact with a driver leaving the pit lane, a bit of an altercation between the two of them, and that's not going to be a happy moment between either driver there, as I also do see that's Leighton Austin he got caught up with. Oh no, that's not the way they wanted to go, and Leighton Austin in the end triggering dominoes there as the Gazix Racing Team car gets caught up as well, and well, all drivers there will be a little bit frustrated with that. I believe that was Christian Ablasser being caught up, not the way anybody wanted that to unfold. But as we do look to Simon Gwynn as he makes his way around, currently the 10th fastest out there, so not looking too bad, it must be said. And well, as all these drivers roll the way through, we also do say hello there to Denny Ploger in the YouTube chat, who couldn't be on the grid today. He's been stood in for by Victor Van Zist. Speaking of which, we'll show you Victor out of the circuit very shortly. Here he is in GT4, so he is your replacement Denny Ploger for today. Although, to be fair, nobody can replace Denny, no matter how good they are in a car, just for the simple reason Denny is a character to himself, a character we absolutely love. But Victor as well is an absolutely brilliant character. Good to see him out there, as it's good to see Denny in the YouTube chat. And hope you're doing well, Denny. And indeed, all of you tuning in, I hope you're doing well. And if this Wednesday has left you with a sad frown on your face, perhaps because it's midweek madness, alternatively on top of that, it's hump day, as many would call it, when you work 9 to 5 on a Monday to Friday, well, hopefully this broadcast will bring a smile to your face instead. As we also do say hello there to Owen Stitch, who says Stitch Driver 22 is the username there, and saying, well, goodness, the McLaren is OP this week. And that's a running joke in the fact that all of our machines are McLarens out there, for those of you astute to notice, and therefore every McLaren absolutely powerful, no doubt about it. We also say hello to Grass52, who says practicing for lap 1 in relation to that incident, and practicing to make sure they don't have that happen on lap number 1, because the opening bends of Miami, particularly turns 1 through to 6, are quite high probability when it comes to incidents early on, particularly with drivers who don't want to give way. But hopefully we don't see any difficulties between drivers here today, because otherwise, well, it could be a bit of a traffic jam. And that's the last thing any of us wants, is a big traffic jam going for the opening course, particularly if it happens in GT3, and then GT4 is going to barrel its way into it. But let's hope it doesn't play out that way. But as we do see Victor Van Zist make his way onwards, well, let's talk towards the top of your GT4 class. And it is Marinko Jornowski who's currently the fastest out there, the Gazix racing driver. And well, Gazix do have 2 teams on the grid, of course, and we have had a bit of a differentiation now between the 2 teams, because last time out, you may remember, we had to quite crudely refer to them as Gazix Racing Team 1 and 2. Well, the team went back to the drawing board with regards to their names, and we do have Gazix GP, and we do have Gazix ART. Marinko Jornowski part of the GP outfit as their GT4 entrant alongside Christian Ablasser, their GT3 entrant, and their reserve driver is none other than the highly established real-world racing driver who raced in our GTE Championship of Mirko Bortolotti. And we do have Gazix ART, and that is your pairing of Stefano Pellegrino and Jan Lintz. Jan Lintz being their GT4 entrant, who you see here right now making his way on around, and then the GT3 entrant is none other than Pellegrino, and we're happy to have them both back out here once again today, as we do look to Stefano as he makes his way on around. So that's one big change that you do have with regards to teams for the purposes of this season. Now we have confirmation of the Gazix Racing team names, and those will gradually be updated as the season goes on. Our teams are allowed to change their names if needed, but they're not allowed to make too many significant changes to the teams themselves. However, we do have a new driver on the grid who is taking over a spot from another driver for the remainder of the season, and he is a brand new driver, I do believe, to SimRacing International, and that is Sean Woods. Now, where is Woods out of the circuit at the moment? The answer to that question is he's not out there, but he is essentially replacing for the Quench 9 Pegasus Stanford Blue Raspberry team. He is replacing Phil Nind for the remainder of the season. Unfortunately, Phil's had to withdraw due to personal circumstances, and therefore we do have Sean Woods who will be taking over his spot, although I do note that Sean is not here today, so therefore maybe he makes his debut at Sonoma instead. But as we're talking about Marinko Jornowski only months ago, let's talk a little bit about our other drivers in GT4 up there. Stephen Donnelly, he's out the car and in the pit lane, so we can't get a view of his car. He's currently half a second slower than Jornowski, as Brandon Dyer is currently your 3rd fastest for Altitude 3M eSports as he makes his way on through the corners. Now, to be fair to Brandon, he was looking quite quick in the initial throws of this qualifying session, but Jornowski seems to put the lap together, and the qualifying setup that our drivers have here, as provided by SimCoach, it is a setup whereby they have enough fuel to be able to do a good number of laps out there, and you do want to get the fuel out the car and really get the car primed up for one rapid lap. As Brandon Dyer makes way onwards, well, currently he finds himself 600ths behind Stephen Donnelly for that fight for second in the GT4 qualifying order, and he is in turn only a 10th ahead of Jack Wyborn, who'll be looking to make amends for the difficulties of Indianapolis, and we're looking to try and notch that first podium here today. But speaking of one of our standing drivers, here's Danny Phillips, making his way on the round right now, and well, Danny currently the 5th fastest there in the GT4 class for the SimCoach team, looking quite impressive, it must be said, but we still do have 8.5 minutes left on this qualifying session, so there's still more time out there, and there's still plenty of time for drivers to be able to impress. One driver we're always going to keep an eye on is Barbecue Bread Racing's Patrick Heenan, the South African driver who, as we mentioned earlier on, at Indianapolis, his strategic undercut was a very bold gamble, and we predict it would have seen him finish in 9th place rather than 14th, if not for the spin he had as soon as he left the pit lane. That spin, unfortunately, due to what was cooled down tyres, not helping out at all, but Patrick Heenan, definitely one of those drivers where you've got to look at him and think to yourself, he is definitely looking quick when he gets it right. But I think he prefers a race situation rather than the qualifying situation. That just seems to get him flying a bit more with regards to the blood. But speaking of flying onto things, we need to flow onto a flying lap, and we jump on board then with Kenneth Baird as he takes us around for a flyer here at the Miami International Autodrome. So in the GT3, he breaks his way at the 100-metre board all the way down to the second gear. Gets the car stopped on a dime at the 90-degree opening corner. And from the right into the left he goes. It takes a lot of curb there at turn number 2. It forces the car to wash out wide. He's got to be careful of that now as he uses all the road width there coming through turn number 4. Bringing the car very shortly then in towards the long SS sequence of turns 5, 6, 7 and 8. Through the left of turn number 5 he goes. Then into the right hander, taking all the curb but braking over the curb as well. And now into the elongated turn number 7. Mounts the curb and now trail braking all the way through turn number 7, all the way to the outside. So that way you can hit a late apex at turn number 8. But goes a little bit deep there. And I think for Baird right now it's one of those laps whereby it has not started well and therefore the rhythm is not flowing. But he now makes his way for the kinks of 9 and 10 on the first of the long straight. Well, he'll be getting ready very shortly for the much lower speed final sector, or final half of the lap, we should say, the middle sector, if you will, as he heads up towards turn number 11. Find a GT4 in front of him, braking in the middle of the road, but that's because the road turns to the left, so therefore you're braking in the middle to actually go to the right in a straight line. Coming down to first gear there for turn 11. Now through the very long right-hander at turn number 12, and unfortunately does find himself caught up behind the GT4. Now this does not help him at all as he comes through turn number 13. He's going to have to back off here through the chicane of 14 and 15, mounting those curbs. They've got to be careful hitting those curbs too harshly. And now through the sharp left-hander at turn number 16. Off camera on the exit as well, but there's a barrier on the outside if you understeer wide, so you'll definitely be told if you've understeered. Now you can go flat out all the way down the back straight up towards the hairpin at turn number 17. Picking up pace behind the GT4, the difference in top end speed between these two cars really being how quickly they get there, with the best part of 600 brake horsepower for the GT3, a modified power output compared to the approximate 450 to 475 of the GT4. But breaking his way in towards the hairpin from the 150 metre board, comes out of the hairpin and now into the sweeping left into right here, turns 18 and 19, and will just lets the car gradually drift up onto the apex there, turn number 19 to complete lap. For Kenneth Baird, not lap he's wanted unfortunately, he's going to have to go again and really hope that this time he can get into that rhythm early on, because his open half lap was definitely a bit calamitous and a bit clumsy in terms of how he made his way between the apexes, but that's not to be rude about it, to be fair. He's doing it better than I ever could, I can tell you that, ladies and gentlemen. Last time I drove a lap on the iRacing simulator at Miami International Autodrome, well, I've never actually completed a full lap. Every time I tried it's been in the barrier. I've still got a lot to learn as this young Padawan learner, as they say. But as we do see the Quench driver make his way through, we'll decide to park it up there in the fake water, and we'll tow it back to the pit onto a bit more clear track. But meanwhile, we saw an onboard lap with GT3, albeit not perhaps at a full pace. What about in GT4, I hear you ask? What are the differences? Well, of course, our GT3 machines may be thought of as 80% race car, 20% road car. The GT4 puts the shoe on the other foot. 80% road car, 20% race car, with a lot less aerodynamic modifications, also quite a bit less engine power by comparison. As we look to the GT4 make its way around of Steve Nix, who, as he makes one down, caught up within the build-up to this round. And, well, I can tell you one thing, the Luxembourgish driver was absolutely excited to go racing again. He was asking me I thought he got on at Indianapolis. Of course, it was a bit of a tough race for him. He was involved in a couple of bruises and bumps, but at the same time as well, he was very happy to be on the grid, and indeed brand new to a SimRacing International grid, and one absolute eager beaver to get back out there and go racing. Good to see him out there getting to grips with the McLaren GT4, and a lot of drivers as well. This is their first time racing the McLaren GT4, or indeed actually running it on iRacing, and therefore they decided to run a GT4 car that's already quite tricky to handle, given its mid-engine rear-wheel drive, but they're also driving it it with less weight in the car. We have taken quite a bit of weight off of it, and we've pushed the power output up by 10%. So what that all adds up to is a car that's even lighter on its rear end, so it's a lot less stable, but also a car whereby it is very hungry to punch its way out of the corners. We've got 10% more engine power on the GT4 and the GT3, and 50 kilograms less weight. And given these cars mid-engine rear-wheel drive, all the weight is located behind the driver rather in front of them, and that really makes these cars become ones where you turn it and indeed control the car with the throttle pedal more than you do with the brakes and the steering wheel. But as Nick makes his way a bit wide there, he'll have to get himself back on track. That'll invalidate his lap, and indeed he's only got now probably 2 left to go if he can get around quickly enough. But speaking again onto a GT4 lap, well, that leads us to Ryan Stringer as he takes us around for a flyer, making his way down towards turn 1. As he breaks his way into the opening corner. Note there, braking a bit earlier compared to the GT3. Not strong brakes. Mounts the curve there very aggressively, but the GT4 can take the curves a little bit more happily compared to a GT3 because the GT4 doesn't run quite as low to the ground based on the regulations. But as he makes his way through turn number 4, well, good start there for Stringer. Now in towards the S's complex as he goes from left into right here. And you can see having to really position the car smartly. Does so. Car goes around in front of him, but thankfully the car slides away from him so Stringer can carry on the lap unimpeded. And now in towards the long left-hander, turns 7 into 8, and here brake it as late as possible, down to an apex speed of 52 miles an hour, and now back with the throttle immediately, using all the road width there, exactly what you got to do. He's only got one car coming up behind him at the moment, and that is a GT3 in the form of Ben Bennyworth, who will be required to respect the fact that Stringer will be on a flyer lap. He has to assume that, and therefore for Stringer, he can approach this lap without concern. As he makes his way in towards turn number 11. The end of long straight, 162 miles an hour is what he breaks down from, and coming all the way down from 175 metres away from corner exit on the brakes, bounces over the curb, and now in towards turn number 12. Keep it nice and tight. Don't let the car wash out. Whatever you do, it does so perfectly. Now into 13. Another tight line as he lets the car roll out over the crest of the chicane. And as he mounts the curb there, cutting all the track limits legally. Now through turn number 16. It's been a lovely second half of lap so far for Stringer. He's been bringing it all together. What's it going to be right at the end? He has gone personal best there in sector 2. He could be on course here to move himself up from 7th place. Indeed, he'll want to, given the fact that it was qualifying that let him down at Indianapolis when he really had the pace to be putting himself on the second row of the grid. But Stringer makes way onwards here. Bennyworth tucking in behind at the moment. Won't get involved in this lap most likely. And now Stringer breaking his way down in towards the turn 17 hairpin. As he does so, Bennyworth right behind him, choosing not to overtake there, respecting the fact that Stringer's on a lap. And now going through the left into right. It turns 18, 19. It's been a lovely lap from Stringer, but what's it going to be at the line? And the answer to that question is he makes his way on through. Well, we are going to see him go to 6th. It's a 202.742, so he does find a bit more time out there and pips by 28 thousandths himself ahead of Thomas Pugh. But Rinko Jornowski still holding the banner high by 3 tenths of GT4 pole position. And what about in the GT3 class? Well, it's currently Marley Joff who holds on by 6 tenths now ahead of Charlie Devlin. My good lord, Joff right now definitely trying to make a point here today, which is that it was misfortune and bad luck that stopped him from winning Indianapolis. Nothing more than that. And indeed, you could agree based on what you saw up to the point of his technical retirement. However, of course, it's always the big what-if question. If he had still been going, would he have finished the race? Would he have won it? Would he not been involved in an incident? We can never know, of course. We don't have a mystic ball for that. As meanwhile, Charlie Devlin pulls aside, letting some drivers go through before getting himself up to speed. He's got 45 seconds to try and get onto his final flying lap, and that will be his hope there, that he can find some clear track right at the end. But meanwhile, as we do look there, it's the machinery of Leighton Austin making his round around. Currently 5th fastest in the GT3s, so looking quite respectable that lap, no doubt about it. And well, we do see a few more of you there saying hello. We say hello to none other than Bulla D, who says, good evening broadcast team, best luck everyone, and good evening to you, good sir or madam, hope you're doing well. We also say hello there to none other than Lagon Fett, who says, hey all, hope for a good race today, and that's none other than Robin Pownier. And Robin, we're missing you out of the circuit, but we're very happy to see you tuning in. Hope you're doing well, good sir. We also say hello to regular viewer and listener, none other than Mark Kent there, giving some thoughts on Season 2 and the potential separation of qualifying. And of course, this is a new frontier for SimRacing International, and we'll definitely take feedback on board from drivers, from spectators, and others down in the paddock. Indeed, we're learning as we go. We do have the combined qualifying session for this season, which both gives and it takes, of course. It's a very different discipline when you have two classes out there, and there's a bit of a time gap between the classes of approximately 10 seconds over an entire lap, particularly over 3.36 miles, but it does really depend on the circuit, but it is definitely something we'll keep in mind. But as we do see Martin Keane make his way on through, we also say hello to Chantal Ploger, wife of Denny Ploger, of course, and hope you're doing well, Chantal. Chantal, and well, good to hear from you. But as we do see our drivers heading around, well, there is none other Martin Kenyon. Well, he had a rough time last out at Indianapolis when he really shouldn't have had a rough time. He had a lot of pace, but unfortunately, bad luck seemed to find him in that one, as it did several GT4 drivers. Now, Christian Ablasser heads towards the line in GT3, 16th at the moment. That is not where Christian Ablasser belongs. Simon Quinn puts himself back up to 12th there on the 53.706, but Ablasser goes no higher than 16th. That is a shock to the system. We would not normally expect the Austrian driver to be all the way down the order like that, but perhaps things haven't worked out here at Miami. Now he's got all the hard work to do. Speaking of hard work, well, Niels Kula right now make his way on around, and as he does so, heads towards the time line. Check a flag out in this qualifying session. He's currently 22nd fastest. Last of those were a valid lap in GT4. What's this lap going to be? It is a personal best in the first and second sector, and it's a good one. It's a 2:04.152. It puts him 17th there. Well done to Nils for that. Puts him just ahead of Patrick Heenan and right behind Victor Van Zist. Meanwhile, Jan Lintz heads towards the line. And what can the Gazix Racing Team driver do in his GT4? He's currently 14th fastest. He's improving in the final sector. And the answer is going to be as Bill Daniels improves in the final sector but doesn't go any higher. Staying 11th there, Daniels. And Lintz stays 14th in GT4. Daniels, of course, a GT3 driver. As Martin Kenyon, he'll be the last driver to get a lap in qualifying today. But he won't be completing it. He's decided it's into pit lane instead. He's had enough. And therefore, that is qualifying complete, ladies and gents, as he completely cuts the pit lane entry. The pit lane chicane there, which drivers will not be allowed to cut in the race, otherwise they'll be subject to an unsafe pit entry penalty, and well, that is going to translate into a sizable stop and go, we do believe. But we're not a stop and go, stop and hold penalty, we should correct ourselves then, typically the best part of 40 seconds. That is qualifying complete, and it is Marley Joffre who has taken pole position, GT3 and overall, and he's done so with a 1:52.178, 6/10 faster than Charlie Devlin, who's second fastest in GT3. A monster lap there by Joff, and definitely a statement, which is, I'm winning this one today. I'm not letting Indianapolis deter me. So Devlin will start second with Matthew Croft and Harvey Weed on that second row for GT3. Head of Leighton Austin and Joey Ireland. Ireland progressing to 6th, but I think in his mind still thinking to himself, what do I need to do to get on that second row of the grid? GT4 is going to be 2 from 2 from Marinko Jornowski in the GT4 qualifying pool. By 3 attempts, header Jack Wyborn was season best qualifier, and Danny Phillips and Stephen Donnelly will bring up the second row of their grid, not too far behind, separated by only a grand total of 600ths in total between 3rd and 4th. But that was qualifying, ladies and gentlemen, and now we come into the warm-up period. 5 minutes. Our drivers have plenty of opportunities to be able to now put the right setup on the car, which is the race setup they've been provided by our setup provider of SimCoach, but also it gives them opportunity to stretch their legs, alternatively go back out on the circuit, practice pit lane entry, which is typically something you expect drivers to practice before the race event, but there's always those out there who decide, let's say they've practiced it already, but they decide just have one last go at it before they go race. And I'm not going to say they haven't practiced, to be fair, because it's rude to assume, but there's always, like, you definitely tell the ones who haven't practiced it, because they'll be very eager to get back out there and realise, I need to get a pit entry running very shortly. But as we do look to Harvey Wheeler for freewheeler racing, make his way on around, the youngster, one of our youngest drivers on the grid, I definitely think not having even turned 18, and remember, of course, our defending champion in the UK SimRacing Sunday GT3 Championship from season 18, and well, the story goes, I wasn't aware of this at the time, he took the Pro Championship, which is the highest accolade available out of our tiers of drivers to be the Pro Champion. He took it in an incredible season finale, which was right on the knife edge, and I believe the day after it was his birthday. Now, I'm not going to say how old he is because I'm not 100% certain. I know he's not 18, he's younger than 18, but to win that championship and then literally the day after, it's your birthday, and well, on top of that as well, Father Max Wheeler racing the series, plus also his Uncle Tom Wheeler racing. Well, they all celebrated straight after, of course, and I do wonder what they did for his birthday there. Was it a double celebration for the championship crown and also for his birthday itself? Well, only Harvey and the family will know, but right now he's had a decent qualifying session. His best so far of the season, putting himself on the second row of GT3, and we look forward to seeing what he's going to be able to do. We also do say hello there to AV Designs, Ashley Brooks Designs, and well, if you are looking for a fantastic livery design, he is one of the many designers out there who you can definitely select from. And indeed, I can't show personal preference, but Ash has done a lot of the liveries on the grid for this championship, and there's some phenomenal ones out there, no doubt about it. Speaking of which, can we get a look to some of them out there? We are going to try to, if we can, although don't quote me now to do it, but definitely point them out. We do know the Axis SimSport ones have been put together by AV Designs. Indeed, one of the sponsored teams out there is none other than Axis SimSport of AV Designs, and we'll see those cars out there. Also, we must give a shout out to the design work behind the livery you'll see for Type 2 racing, done by Mark Sykes Designs. So good to see there. We've got other absolute brilliant artists out there, awesome artists, as we can call them. indeed plenty of livery designs on these cars. We must always give a shout to the AB Designs, of course. Indeed, when Ash isn't racing, he's absolutely cooking up a storm with liveries, if not cooking up a storm for chasing up victories. Speaking of the Type 2 racing, here is Adam Wilson Weir for the Type 2 with Next Gen outfit, and we'll make his way on around right now, and there you can see the lovely liveried McLaren 570S GT4. And, well, Mark Sykes and Adam Wilson Weir work closely together at Next Gen. Type 2 recently joining forces with Next Gen Racing, and a closer collaboration between the two outfits, absolutely brilliant to see. But as Wilson Weir makes his way in towards turn number 1, a decent qualifying session, but once again, there's a bit of work to be done. But the thing about Adam is he's definitely one of those attitudes whereby nothing is perfect. And even if he took pole position, he'd still be chasing an extra 10th. He'd still be looking for that 1,000th he happened to miss in the qualifying session. He's just that kind of driver. Not everyone is that way, to be fair. Some drivers, if they take 5th place in qualifying, it's their best luck they've ever set, they'll be celebrating. Adam, meanwhile, and this is no, I don't think you disagree with me here, he's one of those drivers he'd go, right, I've done that, great. Now I want to go even faster, and he'll do that as well. And AB Designs, they're saying he's on holiday, so he couldn't fit the rig in the car, sadly. And, well, hope you're having a good time on a holiday at least, Ash, because at the same time, we all deserve a break every so often, particularly when the peak of the summer, and, well, definitely in the peak of some warm conditions here today in the commentary booth, albeit on circuit. Well, we do have quite a cloudy day here. The clouds are coming over the circuit. They're really going to start coming over when we go into the race itself, from what I gather from the forecast, and we do have that rain arriving around 35 minutes into the race. Only for a short period, no more than 15 minutes it's expected to last, but it will make the circuit wet. But will it make it wet enough to go to wet tyres? Everyone will be starting on slicks. Nobody will start on wets. That would be way too adventurous and dangerous. But 24 degrees centigrade track temperature. Ambient is also 24 degrees centigrade, so we're going to have a relatively moderate temperature here today. And I think that's definitely also going to make tyre life a bit easier to access unless you're on a wet tyre. As Wilson Weir there decides to say hello to the barrier and just see how wide his car and how wide the road surface is. But those are the conditions we do have. Very light winds here as well, so clouds will very gently make the way along, and Harvey Wheeler there making his way around. Now, we would have done a team spotlight in this 5-minute warm-up session as a segment, but unfortunately we don't have any team spotlight graphics available at the moment. We are waiting for our teams to provide us with a bit more information about themselves, but we'll definitely try and provide a few more team spotlights as the season goes on, because the teams actually loved them. You guys and girls actually loved us talking a little bit about some of our teams out there, including, of course, Quatermass Motorsport and also Sim Coach by Glass Tech Racing, and we'll hope to get some more coverage for our teams on this grid as the season rages on. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, it is time to head to the grid. 5-minute warm-up is complete. It can only mean one thing. It's time to get round number 2 underway. It's time to see who's going to take victory in our first endurance race of the season here at the Miami International Autodrome in the US state of Florida. And as our drivers make the way onto the grid, ladies and gentlemen, this will line up for the one and only race today. As we can see, starting on pole position for round number 2 of the championship in GT3 is going to be Marley Joff. Joined on the front row, the SimCoach driver by Future Class Racing's Charlie Devlin, winner from Indianapolis and looking to try and make it to outer 2. He was 6 tenths behind, but in turn only 1.5 tenths ahead of Matthew Croft, who'll be starting in 3rd. Season best qualifying performance there for the 113 driver, joined on that 2nd row by also season best performance for Harvey Wheeler for Freewheeler Racing. Leighton Austin starts in 5th as a reserve driver today for SimCoach by Glass Tech Racing, and he'll find himself in the company 22,000 behind of Joey Ireland for Altitude 3M eSports. Then it's going to be Harry Langford for Type 2 with Next Gen. A great effort from him in the number 43, ahead of Luke van Goertel for MJK Sim Racing. Then it's going to be none other than Martin King, who starts 9th for MRC 491, ahead of Jean Bretemat for Barbecue Bread Racing. Then we'll see on row number 6 of the GT3s, it's Bill Daniels for Axis Sports with SimCoach, ahead of Simon Quibb. The Dexterous Motorsports driver, followed up by Ben Bennyworth for Quatermass Motorsport, and then we have Russell Fowler for Verano Esport with Flux Liveries, where he starts 14th today, not as high as he qualified at Indianapolis, but as he got an ace up his sleeve when it comes to going green flag racing. Kenneth Baird struggled in qualifying, only managed 15th for Quench 9 Pegasus Panther Berry Crush, and he'll be joined by Christian Ablasser, also struggling in qualifying, only making it onto the 8th row for Gazix GP. Behind the Austrian, it's the Briton of Tom Weston for STN Racing, and James Howard for MJ Racetech completes 9th row. Round off the top 20 of the GT3s, it's Lorenz de Dapper, who literally only made it to the grid at short notice, but just about made it in the nick of time to get into the qualifying session. The US Racing driver leaving it very late in the day to arrive due to traffic outside the circuit, but the Belgian is here and we're very happy for it. And we do see none other than Stefano Pellegrino completing your top 20 for Gazix ART. Outside the top 20 of your GT3s is then going to be none other than Jordan Maymar, 21st for Simcast Racing, ahead of Scott Kostrich. The GPX SimSport Vertex driver followed up 3 tenths behind by Max Dean for Gav Max Racing. And then your last year drivers in the GT3 class, Gareth Newton for GPX SimSport Xenon. And we have Ian Cable, no lap set for the MRC 493 driver, starting from the back of GT3. But that brings us then on to GT4. And Marinko Jornowski will lead the field around 10 seconds behind the GT3 pack for the race start. And the Gezix GP driver taking his second pole position of the season ahead of Jack Wyborn. The MRC 491 driver was 3 tenths off and will be very eager to try and staple himself to the back of Jornowski's car, if not make a move for the win. Danny Phillips starts third for SimCoach, a good qualifying points from him. He was 3 tenths off of the front row, but in turn only was a grand total of 22 thousandths ahead of Stephen Donnelly. Then we do see, starting in 5th for GT4, it's Brandon Dyer for Altitude Frame eSports, ahead of Ryan Stringer for Future Cast Racing, with Thomas Pugh 7th on the grid for Axis SimSports with ABD Designs, ahead of Type 2 Racing with Next Gen's Adam Wilson-Weir. 9th on the GT4 grid, it's Martin Kenya for MJ Racetech, ahead of Brad Pickett, who rounds off the top 10 for Dexterous Motorsports. And then we do have Robin Noel Brown, 11th on the grid for GPX SimSport Xenon, ahead of James Bostock for GPX SimSport Onyx. And behind the all GPX row number 6 of the GT4s, it's Alex Fretwell for Quench 9 Pegasus Panther, Berry Crush. Jan Lint starts 14th for GazX ART, and then we do see behind them to complete what will be the top 20 or so of your GT4s. None other than Noah Kelly starts 15th for Ellis Racing, ahead of MJK Sim Racing's Victor Van Ziest. Then we do have row at number 9, and Nils Kula for Axis SimSport with SimCoach, ahead of Barbecue Bread Racing's Patrick Heenan. And round off that top 20 on row 10 on the GT4s, it's going to be Max Wheeler for Freewheeler Racing and Stefan Tietz for Axis SimSport with SimWorks. Then we do have James Pallett, 21st for Quench 9 Pegasus Panther, Cherry Lime, head of Steve Nix for STM Racing. And bringing up the final spot on the grid, it's Chris Keenan for MRC 493, no qualifying time set, and he's got a lot of work to do from there. But that is the grid, ladies and gentlemen, and as we see this formation lap getting underway, well, it's not too long before we do go green flag racing, because we look all the way to the back straight, and right now there we can see Charlie Devlin and Marley Joff making the way along, albeit both drivers here very eager to get going. Charlie Devlin especially so, and he's got an absolute itch to scratch, which is he wants to try and make it 2 from 2, but Marley Joff has looked to be the quicker driver of the pair. So which way is it going to go? For all that and more, we're not too far away from finding out, as we do look down to circuit side pictures, and you can see right in the distance your GT4s, right at the front of the field the GT3s, and remember we go green at the start finish line, we don't go green before that, and Marley Joff will take them away in GT3, and in GT4 will be expected to wait until Marinko Jornowski takes them green at the same point of the circuit, and it will be at that start-finish line. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, it's over to Marley Joff to take us away for 90 minutes of racing action here at Miami International Autodrome in round number 2 of the Transatlantic Trophy Season 1. And it is go, go, go for the GT3 class as Marley Joff has a good start. But look at Charlie Devlin on the outside. Going for a move immediately here onto the brakes. Devlin wants this move done nice and early. But it's going to be free where they all touch. A lot of understeer under braking. And that's Devlin forced out wide as Harvey Wheeler steers clear. Matthew Croft gets involved. Leighton Austin as well. Austin being at the right at the core of it as the Altitude eSports car goes around. Couldn't quite see who that was making contact with it. Meanwhile, in GT4, we get ready to go racing. Let's come back to your GT4 pack. And Marinko Jornowski about to get them underway as well. The Gazix Racing team driver waits for it. He waits a little bit longer, and the field itching to go. And there they go. GT4 gets underway as well. And it's a good start there for Jordanovski. Really catch out Wyborn and Phillips, as in fact Danny Phillips is going to try and go around the outside of Wyborn as they make their way into the braking zone. Oh, a bit of a touch further back, and that's going to go around for Wyborn. It lightning strikes twice in the case of Wyborn. He goes around again, much like in the early stages of Indianapolis, but the whole GT4 field avoids his wayward car and carries on. So well done to everyone for taking evasive action. We'll have to get a replay of what exactly happened there. But meanwhile, we come back to your GT3s. They roar the way on through, and right now, we're batting going on there. It's Harry Langford for Type 2 and Next Gen fights his way out the inside, trying to make a move down Luke Van Goortel, but in turn, Van Goortel comes back at him now, 2 wide all the way, as the MJK Sim Racing driver tries to hold his line from inside to outside into the chicane. That's going to be tough, it's not going to work, and Langford commits to his guns, and in the end, he's able to land a blow, and he gets it done there for 5th place. Lovely move from Langford, that's how you do it, going through that chicane sequence, but powering his way onwards. Meanwhile, we come back to the GT4 field. And we can see there, too wide, that's going to be Stephen Donnelly for Simcast Racing versus Brandon Dye. And right now, Dye has got aspirations to move forward a little bit there, holding on to that third place on the inside at least. But as they make their way into the braking zone, you can see behind Thomas Pugh and Adam Wilson Weir together. Wilson Weir looking for that move, but in the end, he's beaten on the brakes, so he has to fall back there versus Brad Pickett and Robin Noel Brown, who look to try and get a bit more involved. But it's still too wide there between Dye and Donnelly, as right now, say that multiple times, I dare you, that's definitely a bit of a drinking game. And Brandon Dye does take the move of Stephen Donnelly. Further up the road, Harry Langford's fallen all the way down the order. What's happened to the Type 2 Racing Dre? He was flying up the order, and suddenly falls all the way back, slipping back just like that. And we've taken the tumble down to 16th place in GT3, as Lawrence Dapper, meanwhile, been passed on the inside there by Stefano Pellegrino, the Ellis Racing 118. Being elbowed out there at turn 1, no contact between them to be fair, just simply Dapper was caught out, and Pellegrino moves up into 17th place in GT3. Good move from him, nice and early. That's exactly what he needs here as these drivers continue to push onwards. But it's been an exciting open lap, no doubt about it. Plenty more fighting to come. We come back to the turn 17 hairpin for our GT4s to complete their open lap, and right now we can see there that's going to be Robin Noel Brown keeping Ryan Stringer at bay. Stringer has not had a good start, dropping from 6th to 9th at the start of this for GT4, and the Future Class Racing driver will be eager to push on as we ride on board the front bumper, and we'll get a face on Noel Brown's rear end. But in the end, Stringer goes the outside, trying to look all the way round the outside. He doesn't want to be sniffing exhaust fumes on the back of the fellow McLaren. Instead, he wants to be putting the exhaust fumes on Noel Brown instead. He'll do so as he gets that move done there. Lovely move from Stringer, round the outside as quick as you like, and gets it sealed and done at turn number 3. The 144 driver now up another place on his recovery drive. But behind, you can see the big queue of cars. Noah Kelly there as well, looking to try and get involved as Jan Lintz, but he's not going to be able to at the moment, having to sit in 14th in GT4. As further back, Jack Wyborn trying to dispatch the drives one by one, but with Steve Nix as his next target, although Nix goes very deep there into the S's, and Jack Wyborn will get that move done just like that. The MLC 491 driver rising up the ranks. But we go back up to a GT3, and here we can see your leader, Marley Joff, pulling away. And then it's Leighton Austin ahead of Matthew Croft by almost a second. But Charlie Devlin looking for a move on the inside of Croft here. And, well, the Axis SimSport AV Designs driver weaves away through the corners right now. But 1-3, still having some work to do here, as we do look to none other than Charlie Devlin. And the Future Class Racing driver, eager to make a good impression. Both drivers here enjoying a good race so far. But understandably, it's a situation whereby for Matthew Croft feeling a lot of pressure here as he heads through these corners. And, well, how much is that pressure going to materialise on him later on in the race? That's the big question. As we look back to Russell Fowler, and right now the front of eSport with Flux Deliveries driver. Well, he's continued to make his way up, gone from 14th to 11th so far in GT3, so it's been a good start from him. And, well, now settling into a bit of room as Thomas Weston and Martin King watch on behind. So much batting at the moment. And remember, we have got mixed conditions here. We are expecting some rain, but that rain due to arrive in about 30 minutes time. It'll be a short spell, but it will be a decisive one. And I wonder whether some drivers are already thinking about the rain more than they're thinking about battling early, as that's going to be a mistake, meanwhile, for none other than what was Jean Bredemack going a bit deep, and that's going to bring Ben Bennyworth right on, as meanwhile Joey Ireland and Martin King, they get ready to do battle here, blasting the way along. And the Altitude Rim eSports driver normally seen racing on 2 wheels rather than 4, but right now he's definitely sticking it to his rivals on 4 wheels. He makes way onwards, chasing after Martin King, looking for a move here for 13th place in GT3. Can he find it? The answer is no, not at the moment, as Miguel Christian Ablas going to go defensive there versus Langford, but Island DN goes all in on the brakes, and we has to do so there. Martin King absolutely pressuring him into a mistake otherwise, and Thomas Weston does make a bit of a mistake. They makes a complete ham sandwich at turn number 11 and starts to queue up the cars behind him. And Scott Kostrich, well, there's more battling towards the back of GT3 here. Let's not forget about this, and that's Kostrich right now. Well, he won't be wearing a ski mask inside that car as Lawrence Dapper dives up the inside there. Stefano Pellegrino, they make contact into the barrier, rear end into the barrier. That's not going to help him at all. And Lorenz there, I think, is and it goes round. Good awareness there from none other than Ian Cable to stop the car, and I think Ian just saw everything flash right in front of his eyes, just like that. And the MRC 493 driver thinking to himself, okay, I'll carry on now. But Lawrence Dapper trying to make a move into a space that perhaps didn't exist according to what would have been Stefano Pellegrino, and unfortunately the two drivers coming into contact. But Brad Pickett, meanwhile, he's on the back of Robin Noel Brown. Noel Brown now being used a bit of a proverbial punching bag to make moves, it would seem. Albeit nobody really making contact with him at the moment, but the hits keep coming, and that driver's trying to make the way past him as the GPX SimSport driver finds the DXT Motorsports 88 breathing down his backside. We're running the way through the carousel and up in towards the Miami chicane, and right now no change between these drivers. We can definitely see the serpentine sequence where everyone's trying to stay glued to the next car in front, and it's all about getting the best possible run coming out of some of these lower speed corners and then using the draft to your advantage. Albeit when everyone's got somebody to slipstream off in front of them, you're all equal in terms of straight line speed, and that corner exit really becomes the delta that you're looking for. But we look back to Christian Ablasa meanwhile as he makes one through. It's still being chased by Harry Langford, and just up the road, that is Joey Ireland trying to make another move ahead of Thomas Weston. He does so. He's still chasing after Russell Fowler and Simon Gwynn, but as he now finds the pressure there of Weston getting closer and closer, or the driver in the number 198 car looking for that move around the outside. Will he have to get it done? And the answer is going to be he's going to try it at least. And well, can he get it done on the brakes here? Ireland's going to absolutely go toe-to-toe on the anchors. Just behind there, you can see Christian Ablas getting involved, and also that was Martin King trying to make a move there on Weston for 13th place. The King was broke himself into the side of Weston, but then they all survive it. It's really happening inside the top 15 of GT3 at the moment. Plenty of excitement, and that's before you come back to GT4, and look at this. Danny Phillips, the sim coach, right now, 2 wide, battling with Brandon Dyer. They're going to left, they're going to the right. Brandon Dyer still trying to make his way through here, trying to take second place over Phillips. He does so there. Brandon Dyer just understeers a little bit wide on the transition from the fifth quarter to the 6th quarter, and up the inside goes Stephen Donnelly, but he makes contact, and the Simcast racing drive there, essentially having to be bounced down like a bit of a pinball, and falls back into the proceedings as Thomas Speed follows on behind him. We ride on board with the Axis Simsports AB Designs driver, gets in very close here as he makes his way on through, and well, what can the number 20 driver do here? Can he make a potential move happen? Is it going to be possible? We'll have to see what the answer to that is going to be as he heads in towards that braking zone, but right now staying back there, not quite able to make it happen this time. He's eager to make a move, that's one thing for certain, but the problem is trying to make a move versus it actually happening is a bit different here, as we are definitely seeing on the streets of Miami. As Pew makes his way on around, well, right now, what is going to be next between these drivers? That's the big question. We'll have to wait and see as we look back to Brad Pickett in the meantime. And Pickett is still rolling off those corners and under a lot of pressure from the driver behind him, and that is none other than Martin Kenyon, who is trying to make a bit of a move, but Kenyon being made to wait his turn in the meantime. So plenty of back and forth battling between these drivers, but the only problem is right now really is that game of back and forth, follow the leader, and nobody quite able to make a move happen, at least at the moment. But as they come on around through the corners, let's see if anyone feels a bit daring when it comes to going onto the brakes. That can always be a bit of food for thought between drivers. And if so, well, somebody might end up making a bit of an error, alternatively making the mother of all sins and making it work out. Somebody's going to have to try it, no doubt about it, but who could be the bravest one to do so? That is the question. As we do see Brad Pickett there phasing in out of existence for a brief moment, not what he wants to have happen, and that will be a bit of a concern. As these drivers continue to fight, we do apologise there if the overlay refreshed itself. Just a bit of driver data being loaded in the background there, an error that was picked up earlier on, and it has just been resolved. So don't adjust your TV screen, that's on our end, ladies and gentlemen. But as all of them make their way through, we need to go back in time, take a look at some of the big moments from earlier on this race, and therefore we go back to our race start. And this was how it all got underway, and as it did so, we looked to the GT3 field first, of course, and there was a bit of an incident that started off the race for one of our drivers in GT3, and that was Joey Ireland getting caught up and being brought to a stop. So they went green, and Marley Joff in the end parking the car in the middle of the road, but watch out for the altitude trim eSports car. There was a little bit of a jink there, and in the end, we're doing well to do so, but as he made his way 3 wide, oh, and it went round then the 3 wide situation. I'm not sure if there was contact, but everyone did very well there to take evasive action versus Joey Ireland, so that could have been tears for so many. This is what it looked like on board. So Ireland made his way into that braking zone, and as he did so, we found himself in an absolute cacophony of cars, and in the end, there was a tiny touch with the car on his right, and that's what sent the driver loose, and well, the car loose, I should say, and Joey Ireland's in the end having to get it back together as progressively as he could. So that explains what happened to him at the start. Then we had this for Jack Wyborn. It all went a bit wrong for Wyborn when he went green flag racing. The MRC 491 driver made his way into that braking zone, battling side by side with Danny Phillips at the time. And what exactly went wrong? And the answer is he was tapped on the rear by the Simcast car and then rubber banded himself off of what was the side of Phillips's rear quarter panel, the rear right. And Jack Wyborn had to hold his brakes and just patiently wait. Also went a bit wrong for Ryan Stringer in parallel, because this was the Future Class racing driver heading down to that braking zone on that front bumper we are. As he did so there, find himself right in the thick of it. Oh, goodness me, that got a bit close. And, well, the camera was wiped off the car there, so he transitioned away, but went into the side of Wyborn and had a bit of an impact there. So, unfortunately, some damage to his car. Kenneth Baird had a bit of difficulty on lap 1 in GT3, and this was the 3 wide. Oh, goodness me! And that was coming on down the first along straights, and he was sent one way then the other. We did not catch this at the time, and Kenneth Baird being sent spinning on around there, and well, Kenneth Baird really being knocked about for course to course. This is what it looked like from another angle. He wasn't that free wide as well. The GPX SimSport cars may rush to the barrier behind, and in the end knocked one side, then the other. And Kenneth Baird at that point, a passenger in his car, and well, understandably, it was a nightmare moment. But thankfully, only he was impacted and another driver. Speaking of which, Harry Langford, we're wondering what happened to Harry. This was on the end of lap number 1, so coming on down into the braking zone for the hairpin, and well, coming into that braking zone, he was in a free wide, and free does not go into one hairpin, and that was definitely a bit of an eager move being made by the drivers alongside Langford. This is what it looked like from a different angle. And this was coming on down. Now, who was that with? We believe that was with Luke van Goertel. Who was the driver on the inside is the question. Definitely was a bit adventurous. And I think it might have been one of the freewheeler racing guys. I think that was Harvey Wheeler who was on the inside there. He would argue he was squeezed under braking, but I get the feeling that the two drivers coming up behind Harry Langford may both be going to the stewards room afterwards to apologise. But meanwhile, we come back to James Pallett. This is what happened to him on the tail end of the first long stretches on lap number 1 in GT4. And this is the Quench 9 Pegasus Pan for a Cherry Lime driver coming barreling into the braking zone. And unfortunately, finding Patrick Heenan there as what was his stopper, but that's not the way he wanted it to go whatsoever. We also had James Howarth into the pit lane due to an issue. And meanwhile, we had this for Nils Kula for Access SimSport Sim Coach. This was a lap later. And he made his way on through turns 2 and 3, mounted the curve very high, and the rear of the car completely being left washed out to dry. Jordan Maymar had this on lap number 3. We will be coming back to your live racing shortly, ladies and gentlemen. Don't you worry about that. And the Simcast racing driver, in the end, rolled his way up the hill and into the chicane complex. And that was the instant we saw for what was Lorenz Didapa being turned on around. So Maymar did very well to avoid that. This was another angle of the Didapa Pellegrino incident. And, well, you can see there, Stefano Pellegrino, a bit wounded on that outside line. And Didapa said, I'll throw the car on the inside. Pellegrino said, well, you've given me no room to exist. I can't cut the course. And Lorenz Didapa being turned to the barrier. But with that, we also head now back to your live racing. And as we do, still more action to come. And speaking of which, Joey Ireland here, still fighting. And, well, that's very deep into the turn 17 hairpin there. I think Simon Quinn was shown the entirety of the circuit there. He didn't need a tour guide, Joey, but you've definitely acted as one for poor Simon Quinn as he gets himself back on the road. And Simon there definitely been shown the entire width of that turn 17 hairpin, and also the fact there's a barrier there. And I think Simon now definitely knows that, and he might use that to his advantage next time around. But definitely a bit of a moment between the two drivers, although we can forgive them for that, both eager on the brakes. Going back up to Leighton Austin, the man in second in GT3 meanwhile. Well, he's ahead of Charlie Devlin, and these two constantly back and forth. They have chopped and changed the positions, and both drivers looking very rapid, it must be said. Although Devlin right now perhaps prioritising what is the longer term pace rather than being a bit eager to try and make moves, whereas Leighton Austin definitely the other end of the spectrum wants to go forward as they are catching GT4 traffic now, and that's going to be the next step in the story, which is how do you carve your way past the GT4s, particularly if you come onto the back of a GT4 group going into the second half of the lap, where it's going to be very hard to pass them. But we can see there, that's Harvey Wheeler up the inside of Matthew Croft. And Harvey right now, I can tell you what, he is absolutely all guns blazing in the braking zones. Well, it didn't quite work out turn 17 earlier on, but that definitely worked out versus Matthew Croft, who had one choice to make. Either step wide or don't and be in a collision. But Wheeler goes up the inside there, and well, it's going to be one unhappy GT4 driver who definitely feels like he's been inconvenienced, but Wheeler's got no time to waste at the moment, you'd argue, as they make their way on through. Adam Wilson, we're just a bit further up the road here, Robin Earl Brown for close company, as that's going to be your 9 Pegasus Pan for a Quench car coming on through, and I do believe that's Kenneth Baird who's trying to essentially get himself ahead of the GT4 pack after his repair work in the pit lane, and that was because of the instant coming down the first long stretch on the open lap. Wilson, we're battling with Noel Brown still as they fight for 7th place in GT4, and well, you can see here right now Noel Brown trying to get to the inside. Wilson Weir covers him off, onto the brakes they both go, and in the end, does Noel Brown go around the outside as Marley Joff finds these two GT4 drivers. This is not comfortable for the GT3 leader at all. He gets ahead though, Noel Brown. He has to say to Noel Brown, look, you're going to give me the space, and well, Wilson Weir there, we'll see that Joff's run past him already, so Marley Joff does get through in the end, but that goes to show you just how tricky this traffic will be to pass. Now, to be fair, the GT4 drivers have a right to the racing line. The rules and regulations do state, we'll hold the phone on that because that's Noah Kelly towing to the pit lane. I'm not quite sure what's happened to the LS Racing drive. We'll get a replay shortly. And well, the rules and regulations do state the GT4s, when they are being overtaken by a GT3, are to drive predictably and hold their lines. So they're on the racing line, they're allowed to be on it. They can choose to give space to a GT3, but they're only expected one thing, that's not to battle with them, as that is a car around there. And I think that's Steve Nix, who is already a lap down on the GT4 pack. The GT4 drive goes for a bit of a spin at turn 7 and 8. Easy mistake to make, to be fair, because it's such a long corner and you're transferring all that weight onto what is the front right tyre gradually over time, so in the end the whole car swings around like a pendulum. as he gets himself back together. Well, we have Alex Fretwell here fighting with Jack Wyborn as they make their way up towards turn number 11. They fight over 13th place in GT4, and Wyborn goes at the inside, but he cooks it too much. And in the end, Alex Fretwell says that's overdone. And right now, see, this is well done, as he definitely makes a brilliant counter-attack there to retake 13th place in GT4. But we come back all the way back to Brandon Dyer, who right now, well, that's a bit unconventional, but if it works, they'll say. That's Marley Joff pushing Kenneth Baird past Brandon Dyer. The two GT3 drivers push each other along to get past the GT4 second place runner. Well, Kenneth Baird right now be grateful for that from Joff, although Joff is definitely trying to check out this race as quickly as he can with an 8-second gap already to Leighton Austin. Perhaps he's got a bus to catch, but meanwhile, we come back to the 7th place runner in GT3. That's Sean Brettemack, and the reason we come back to him is because he intermingles with GT4s. He leads Joey Ireland and Ben Bennyworth up to the hairpin, and Ireland goes all the way out the inside as I almost spit all my words out onto the keyboard in front of me, and that's because Ireland went all in on the brakes. Well, that's a bit daring, that's very cheeky, but it worked out. The only problem is he now biffs Alex Fretwell's car out the way. Fretwell won't be too happy about that, and well, of course, Patrick Heenan will be grateful because that's less pressure on him as they make their way up towards the next braking zone. In fact, I do believe, that was James Pallett being elbowed out the way there, not Alex Fretwell. I do apologise for misinformation. As meanwhile, who's that going around? That's one of the Dexterous Motorsports cars in GT4, who's definitely had a bit of a moment. We'll have to see very shortly. I think that's Brad Pickett who's got it all sorts of wrong. And Brad's race going from good to bad to backwards. And Stefan Tietz, meanwhile, makes his way past a car that's stricken. That's Victor Van Ziest. Not the place you want to get that spun. And Victor right now has got to very carefully get that moved out the way. That's not going to be easy. He is essentially creating a situation right now as 1 race 9. He is gently moving it, and Victor's doing his best there. Well done to him for doing so. That's not easy as a driver. You would panic typically in that situation, but not Victor. James Pallett backs off there, respects the fact that Van Ziest is trying to get the car recovered, and they'll continue their battle for 18th in GT4. And it's good to see a number of you actually already talking about the fact that we're already seeing a huge progression in the multi-class battling, and drivers that really respect each other a lot more since round number 1. Oh, that's not respect between two drivers. There's Charlie Devon and Leighton Austin almost mating their way into the barrier there. The two cars getting entwined between their bodywork, and well, the sim coach of the Class Tech Racing driver in the end, well, both of them hitting the barrier quite harshly or hitting each other, but Charlie Devlin does get through there. But that was a very interesting overtake, let's put it that way, and I wonder what damage is on both cars there, because that definitely was not the way we expected it to go. And here is a quick replay to show what happened. So this was Charlie Devlin battling with Leighton Austin, fighting over 2nd place in GT3. Leighton Austin up the inside. Devlin going for the switchback, but had to stop the car because Austin had parked it. Now making the way around the corner. Do we get a closer camera view here? And looks as though Leighton Austin there getting caught on Devlin's car. And, well, a bit of an intriguing one there. The two cars essentially facing through each other. Bit of netcode perhaps on iRacing. Does happen every so often, but as we do with any online simulator, Charlie Devlin surviving that one, taking 2nd place, but perhaps the most unconventional overtake that we're going to see in this championship. Let's come back to your live racing. As they make the way on through. Well, right now, the sim coach by Glass Tech Racing driver still keeping his head down, and Harvey Wheeler now on the back of all this, and he wants to be on it, as AB Design says there. Sure, they're teammates as well, and it's going to be a bit of an awkward team debrief later in relation to 2 of our drivers, and a bit of a moment, as we also do say hello there to X3's27, who's enjoying the racing, and, well, as all these drivers make the way on around, 20 minutes into our 90 minutes right now. Time is absolutely flying us by here at Miami, but this is still a thrill, no doubt about it. And Harvey Wheeler, well, he definitely wants to try and see if he can intermingle with Austin Devlin, but he's probably seen what's happening between them. Does he get involved here? He's right on board with the three-wheeler racing driver, and, well, GT4 on the inside, so it's going to narrow his approach. Onto the brakes they go. Leighton Austin there, design to brake later. It's interesting, Austin really doesn't mind that inside line. He's actually able to get that car stopped, and it's where he parks the car is right in the middle of the road. It makes switching back or a cutback attempt around the outside at turn number 12 almost impossible. Austin has really got that braking zone nailed for turn number 11 in terms of that inside line and where he can position the car to just be wider than most. And Harvey Wheeler now find out, much like Charlie Devlin did earlier on, the fact you're going to be quite forceful to get past Leighton Austin if you can. As they all head onwards, and Mark Kent says that's how GT4s are made in relation to Charlie Devlin and Leighton Austin getting very intimate into the barrier at the exit at turn number 12. And we'll try and keep this broadcast rated child-friendly, of course, as I try to make the world around right now. Well, there's definitely going to be a bit of a battle potentially here between Matthew Croft and Mick van Goertel, as these two fight over 5th place still in the GT category. But from them, let's also talk a bit more about GT4s, because we've got both classes out there, all enjoying a good fight. And right now, well, what's happening? In fact, before we get to GT4, we've got 2 wide here, we believe, between GT3 drivers, as Harry Langford, well, he was 2 wide, and Thomas Weston's just been able to sneak back ahead, coming out of the hairpin at turn 17. But Langford now on his recovery drive here, trying to come back once again. We're right on board with the Type 2 with next-gen driver. Looking down over the front of the car as they cleave their way through some of the leading GT4s, going around the outside there of Danny Phillips as Harry Langford finally gets past. And well, it's cost him a bit of a run there versus Thomas Weston, scat back up to half a second. As it all make the way on through right now, you can see everyone fanning out, and just behind that is going to be Ryan Stringer under a bit of pressure here to pass Danny Phillips as the GT3 makes his way through. That is Simon Quinn, stopping Stringer from having a move potentially on, and now they've got Martin King who's going to make it 3 wide. Surely not. There's no way he's going to get it done with the error there, and up the inside me goes the runner eSports car. This move's coming everywhere. Russell Fowler, well, my goodness there, I can tell you one thing, the way he spotted that was like Sherlock Holmes. That was a complete detective. That was case closed and solved, because Russell Fowler, take a bow, good sir. That was a move on Martin King. I think Martin's going to be looking in front of him thinking, what, is Russell Fowler some kind of magician? How on earth did he just get ahead? Well, the answer is Russell Fowler saw it was 3 wide and said, there's plenty of space on the inside, let's make it 4 wide. But they're coming to the braking zone right now, still plenty more fighting behind here as the GT3s continue to intermingle with your GT4 runners, and this is absolutely brilliant as they make the way around right now. And well, I can tell you one thing, Sim coaches Danny Phillips still trying to find a way past Ryan Stringer, but as all these drivers continue to push each other on, well, we've got more fighting further up the road. Luke van Goertel side by side here with Matthew Croft, MJK SimRacing GT3 entry. Oh, there's contact between the 2 of them, and in the end we got elbows out there, and right now no love between these 2 whatsoever. And well, Valentine's Day was back in February, I can tell you that right now. No love there. They've got to wait another, what is 6 months before they regain that love to each other as they make the way through. Matthew Croft right now, well, the accidents will AB Designs drive. I think they'll both be told they need to calm it down a little bit by their team principals on the pit wall, but one of these drivers was going to want this 5th place more than the other at this point. But they've got to be careful of that, because those barriers, they do not flinch when it is ending races. That's to make the way on through. Denny Ploger saying there, missing some screen time for what is the big boss, and particularly MJK SimRacing cars. We'll look Van Goertel there, definitely one of the 2 MJK SimRacing cars in a bit of a bruiser, but able to survive it. As meanwhile, we look to the other MJK car, a bit further down the order, I do believe, of Victor Van Ziest, and right now down here in 18th place, chasing after James Pallett, and right now trying to close down the gap there to your driver in the number 13, the 12 chasing the 13 there, and will the numbers line up, and they'll be looking to try and make some more progress in due time. Robin Noel Brown, 20th place at the moment, does a black flag, so he's got a drive-through penalty for instant points. Alternatively, a slowdown that has not been served correctly. The only other thing would be where he's coming to the pit lane on lap 10, potentially he's picked up a speeding penalty in the pit lane, and if so, he'll have to serve that within 3 laps. He'll have to serve it on the lap he's currently on, as otherwise it will be upgraded straight away to a disqualification. But we come to none other, some more battling in GT3 as the rain arrives a little bit earlier than we thought. It's arrived 25 minutes into the race, and Harry Langford, well, he battles his way past Thomas Weston, but with the rain starting to fall, well, right now the Type 2 next gen drive, we're grateful to have got that move done. As meanwhile, there's Bill Daniels and Martin King, and Daniels right now goes all in for it. My good lord. Well, that's how you do it into the chicane, to be fair. Good on Bill for that one. The Exorcist were Simcoe trying, leaving Martin King wondering where on earth it came from. Although Russell Fowler right now definitely still holding the accolade this season for probably the best move that we're going to see in the championship, or at least he's raised the bar very high. But the rain falls, everybody is on the slick tyre. Well, let's just remind you of that. So therefore, we'll have to wait and see what the game plan is going to be, and who potentially flinches and goes onto the wet tyre, if so. And we'll just bring that up on your graphic there. There you can see everyone on that slick tyre at the moment. And, well, nobody's going to be coming off it in the meantime as they make the way on through. As they do so, seeing the gap between all the drivers still, and the rain does fall even more so here, but it is light rain, so therefore, as long as they can keep the pace and keep the temperature in the tyres, they might be able to survive it and not be forced onto the wet. So this is now going to be just as much about just simply not making many mistakes as it is about trying to battle with your peers. Let's come to the boss man, as Denny Ploger says, James Bostock for GPX Insport, head administrator, none other than what is SimRacing International, but of course, like any good administrator. Your championships are only as good as what you can prove they are, and therefore being on the grid and racing in them is the best possible advertisement for them, as you'd say. And indeed, there is a real-life foundation for that. If anybody knows Pat Blakely, until he retired, I do believe, from his role as circuit manager at Thruxton, you would see him racing the likes of Formula Ford at 1600 at its home circuit, as well as around the country. Well, if you're going to help run one of the biggest circuits in the country, you might as well go racing it as well. And James Bostock, if you're going to run one of the biggest championship series in the world, you better be on the grid racing it as well. And James Bostock, living by the sword and dying by the sword. But as he makes one around right now, definitely continue to live out there. But as we see him in 12th place at the moment, having had a good start to this race, and hasn't gained any place in class, but nor has he lost any. Well, GT4 is definitely calming down a little bit now as we transition into the second third. But what's going on in GT3? Thomas Weston still here being chased by Harry Langford. We look back from the rear of U198. The spray starting to build off the back of the car, but nobody at the moment into the pits. Although I say that, Kenneth Baird is into the pit lane. Robin Noel Brown has come in, but we believe for Noel Brown that was because of his black flag penalty, so he has been forced in. But was there a change of tyres for him? No, there was not. Kenneth Baird, meanwhile, is into the pits. Is he risking it? We can see that the rain is very light, and Thomas Weston is in. So he comes in, so does in front of him Ben Bennyworth of Great Mass Motorsport. We have got drivers coming into the pits, and remember, this is a 90-minute race. We are expecting most likely this will be a two-stopper. But do you just come in for fuel, or do you go for the tyre change that is going to cost you more time in the long run? As we do see there, Scott Kostrich, John Maymont, Stefano Pellegrino all barreling their way on past the GT4, and that poor GT4 Brandon Dyer there being really hung out to dry. But Brandon Dyer in second in GT4 right now, continues to try and find a way to chase down Marinko Jordanowski. 4.1 seconds is the gap, although you would say a lot of that gap has been contributed to by the way the GT3 traffic has caught up to the GT4s. But we have got wet tyres going on to Thomas Weston, onto Ben Bennyworth and Kenneth Baird. They're all going to the wet tyre. They are playing it safe, as Steve Nicks has towed to the pit lane. But whilst all this is happening, meanwhile, we need to take a look back at that move made by Russell Fowler. So this was the absolutely epic move from Russell Fowler on Martin King, at the time taking what was none other than 12th place. And you can see there, three wide Martin King going around the outside of the button GT4s, and Russell Fowler just simply went, well, if there's all that space on the inside, nobody's going to use it, I'll use it instead. Absolutely perfect there on the brakes, and you couldn't ask for a better overtake if you head back to your live racing. As we do come back, meanwhile, well, rain continues to fall here. As I look at my Conte booth window as well, I can see quite a few people in the grandstands actually putting trolleys up at the moment. So perhaps the rain a bit more intense than expected, as Marley Joff into the pit, finds a few GT4s in his way into the pit lane. That won't help him at all. And the Sim Coach drive, he's coming in. That probably means everyone's coming in, because normally if you see your race leader come in, and particularly for somebody from one of the most established teams out there, Sim Coach, well, understandably, he's perhaps feeling as though it's not worth risking it. Although saying that, Charlie Devlin says you can risk it. He carries on, and Devlin right now for Future Class Racing, making his way out the inside of one of our GT4s there, one of our Axis Sim Sport by Sim Coach cars, and well, Devlin stays out. Matthew Croft as well stays out, and well, Matthew a very bold driver for Axis Sim Sports by AB Designs, and well, I'd imagine that he's going to be one of those drivers who simply says, I can make this work, I can survive it. Joff is going on to the wet tyre, conversely, as we do bring you back to showing you your tyre compounds on the respective cars out there as they make the way on around. It's going to be interesting to see who exactly gets it right and who doesn't at this point in the race, as it all make the way of through. Strategy will become an increasingly important fact here as we go deeper and deeper into the distance. Stefano Pellegrino, meanwhile, the Gazix ART driver, he's also risking it staying out there. And of course, if you qualify further back and you've been involved in an instance, you may as well risk it, because if you end up being forced into the pit lane later on, you have nothing ventured, nothing gained, and therefore the risk could be worth the reward. That's all in GT3. GT4, meanwhile, a lot of our GT4 drivers are being a bit braver. Speaking of which, our leader, Marinko Jordanowski, goes on to another lap. Ryan Stringer does, but Brandon Dyer and Stephen Donny are into the pit lane. So is Adam Wilson-Weir, Thomas Pugh, and Jan Lintz. We've got a very sizable split here in the GT4 category as to who is coming in for wets and who's staying out on slicks. But right now, it does seem as though your top 13 staying out for the slick tyre. Although saying that, we do have several drivers in there, keeping an eye on what tyres are going onto the cars, the likes of Donny, Dyer, and, well, also Wilson-Weir. Stefan Tietz, the German driver for Axis Simworks, moving up And, well, moving up in the 4th place there. Yet to pit, of course. Fuel tanks are also going to become a factor as this race goes on. Albeit we do have the defined fuel tanks for this season. And just to remind you of the fuel loads that are permitted for these cars, well, in the GT3, in qualifying trim, it's 25%. In race trim, it's 60%. And in GT4, it's 18% for qualifying and 70% for race. So GT4s have a bit of a bigger fuel tank available too than they need, to be fair. The GT3s have a slightly smaller fuel tank available, but it does normally just slightly offset the pit stops between GT3 and GT4. GT3s will normally come in first, around about, as we saw at Indianapolis, the longest they can go is around about 35 to 40 minutes. GT4s, meanwhile, can go around about 40 to 45 minutes. There's not quite a crossover with regards to the classes in the pit stops, and that's by design to enable the classes to have their own strategies. But coming back to what's happening on the road here, plenty of excitement action. And Simon Quinn on the wet tyres with Ben Bennyworth and Thomas Weston. Oh my goodness! And Thomas Weston straight into the back of Simon Quinn there, and under braking. He's got it all sorts wrong, and Simon Quinn barreled into the barrier. And, well, Weston trying to carry on here, but that's going to be big damage on the car. This rain is really starting to fall now. And on those wet tyres, well, even the wet tyres, they need time to warm up. They don't just simply come out of the box absolutely in perfect condition. And Thomas Weston showing you what happens for STM Racing when you do get it wrong. Marley Juff, of course, who has gone to the wet tyre, he's down to 4th place. He is a sizable distance behind the top 3 of GT3, but he thinks those wet tyres are going to help him. But again, it's how long this rain period lasts. Now, we have been told it lasts no more than 15 minutes. So if so, well, it began about 25 minutes into the race. We are now the best part of 32 minutes in, so we should see the rain only last about 3 or 4 more laps, and then the race will turn around again. We'll start to see drier conditions prevail. But Martin King in to go onto the wet tyre. Scott Kostrich as well is in, most likely to go onto the wet. So we have a limited number of drivers who are trying to survive on the slick tyre at the moment. Minko Jornowski is one of them, but those who are trying to survive, the problem is if they now come in, they have lost effective time to those who've gone to the wet tyre. They have essentially gambled and it's not gone the right way, but that's the way it goes. Ryan Stringer, an example, has now come into gone to wets in GT4. Max Wheeler, meanwhile, carries on. And, well, the three-wheeler racing driver feeling as though that he can keep going. And we know he's one of the most consistent drivers in changing conditions, or changeable conditions, we should say. So perhaps there's some effort into the madness here for Max. Let's see what it's going to be. Stefan Tietz also doing the same. Coming out of the pit lane, meanwhile, that is Scott Kostrich's GT3. And, well, they're all weaving one the way on through. But as we do see Ben Bennyworth there on the wet tyre, all dialed in, the QMS Motorsport driver. He's picking up places quickly. That's Martin King being passed. And that's a 13th place in GT3. As up the road, battle for 11th in the class. Jean Brett back for Barbecue Bread Racing. And none other than Harry Langford. And Langford on the inside of the kink there. And goes for it. Does he get it done? We've seen plenty from the Type 2 and Next Gen Racing driver today in terms of impressive moves. He's going to make another one here. Does he get it stopped in time? The answer is yes, he does. But speaking of impressive moves, the moves that haven't gone right, Russell Fowler's had a bit of an instant, and he's just recovering the car there coming out to turn number 8. He's going quite slowly, so it's not good. As meanwhile, more pit stop action. Charlie Devlin and Joey Ireland into the pits from the leader GT3. So is Christian Ablasser, and Marley Joff will be grinning a little bit because he picked the right call to go to the wet tyre immediately, and with the tyre change being immediate, it means now he has essentially gained time over Devlin, Ireland and Ablasser because they've lost time by being on a slick tyre in the increasingly wet conditions. So Marley Jov has got this absolutely right as Stefano Pellegrino comes into the pit lane as well. And I do believe Jordan Maymar now the only slick shod runner in GT3, still carrying on the Harvey Wheeler onto that wet tyre, of course, and everyone else is in. But Maymar is trying to survive it, and he'll be hoping that this rain stops very soon. If it does, he will gain a huge amount of time in doing so. That's what he's praying on here, but look how he's crawling right now through the corners. Maymar definitely, if he doesn't come in on the next lap, I suspect he will essentially have to park the car up somewhere because it will be aquaplane on those slick tyres. He's losing all that tyre temperature as Harvey Wheeler right now glued to the back of him like a bad rash. Rinko Jornowski into the pit lane from the lead of GT4 meanwhile, so he's going to the wet tyre. What about Max Wheeler? Well, he's a long way back. We'll have to wait and see. And the three-wheeler racing drive still carrying on for now at least. Although, given the gap there, I wonder if he's been involved in a little bit of an incident as Max Wheeler. The answer seems to be yes, he has been. Oh, and he gets it wrong there coming out the hairpin, as does Stefan Tietz there, who's driving absolutely on the limit right now. Is the Exodus Simworks driver. They're both trying to carry on here. Credit to them where it's due. They are the only slick runners right now in GT4, with Jornowski relinquishing his slick tyres for a set of wets, or at least coming to the pit lane for what is fuel, if nothing more. But Stefan Tietz and Max Wheeler still trying to fight on here. And, well, the rain has stopped. So, as quickly as it's fallen, it stops now only 11 minutes later. At least on the start-finish line, as I look at my contact booth window, I can see there's no rain falling onto the glass panels here. And if so, Max Wheeler and Stefan Tietz may have just survived it. And Jordan Maymar, well, he's the only GT3 driver who is on the slick time. The SimCast racing driver right now, he's got to not make a mistake at this point. If he avoids any mistakes and just keeps himself alive, this circuit will dry. And when he comes into the pit lane, he can gamble if he wants on just simply going onto the same set of tyres, put fuel in, and on he goes. Whereas everyone else will have to change off of their wet tyres to a set of slicks, most likely towards the end of the race, and therefore he has gained essentially what will be at least 28 seconds in the pit stops, just simply because he has not needed to change the full set of tyres over. I'll have to see if that's the way it goes in reality. But a lot of strategic gambles here for so many drivers, and it is proven to be a tough one. As meanwhile, Bill Daniels make his way onwards. The camera's shaken there by a car coming on through. Bill Daniels right now making his way past Joey Ireland, who is struggling a little bit. And Access into what was Sim Coach driver chasing after Martin King 4 seconds up the road. But Matthew Croft into the pit lane. He has picked up a black flag on pit entry, so I believe that's a speeding into the pits, or at least unsafe entry. Jordan Maymar is in as well. And, well, it'll be interesting to see what Maymar's going to do. Is he just simply going to come in for some fuel? Because I suspect the fuel tank is starting to run dangerously dry. Or is he going to go to the wets? If he goes to the wets now, surely for Jordan, that is an absolute culpable error here of strategy. He's survived on the slicks. He needs to ideally stay on them to make this work out, unless he really feels like it's too risky. Meanwhile, more pit stop coming in there. We saw Joey Ireland coming in. Here's Max Wheeler, GT4 leader right now, 2.2 seconds behind. That is going to be none other than what is Stefan Tietz there following him onwards. I see AB Designs cheering on Stefan Tietz and seeing him doing so well. And I can see they're Patrick 48, not on the grid today, but understanding missing this round due to being away, but gaining information for the Quakemas team. And we'll be very happy to be supplying that information for Ben Bennyworth. I do believe there'll be no GT4 entry for Quakemas Motorsport here in this round. But Wheeler makes his way on through, and some questions being asked what happened to Victor Van Ziest, because he has essentially retired from this race as a lap number 15. Several drivers have retired, including Simon Quinn after that huge shunt to his rear end earlier on, and Ian Cable's also at this one, Steve Nicks as well, Noah Kelly and Lawrence Tadapa. We'll get some replays of those incidents very shortly, as we have got black flags now for James Pallett and Niels Kula as well. But what you're seeing on screen is Brandon Dyer on a set of wet tyres, absolutely flying. He drafts his way past one is Stefan Tietz and dives up the inside versus Max Wheeler into turn one. Brandon Dyer on the wet tyres here. It is no surprise that he's making these moves so quickly. Jordan Maymar, update by the way, did leave the pit lane on a set of slick tyres, so he has gone from slicks to slicks, and he has only put fuel in the car as we understand it. So Maymar is trying to survive, and Joey Ireland meanwhile running 20th of your GT3s. He's on the slick tyres as well, so therefore he's taken the gamble now that the rain has stopped. So watch out for Jordan Maymar in GT3. We don't reckon he could win it given the gaps, but he could definitely surprise everyone. And well, meanwhile Brandon Dyer will be hoping he can storm away from Max Wheeler and Stefan Tietz. He's going to need to hammer the circuit whilst it is still drying, whilst those wet tyres in their prime. Max Wheeler right now has got to crawl his way around and not make any mistakes, but Stefan Tietz is trying to make the slowest overtake you're going to see today on the inside, down that inside line, but having no traction on corner exit, and has to stay in third place in the class. But we've got some incidents to bring you up to speed with, ladies and gentlemen, including what happened to Victor Van Ziest, and here is a replay to explain. So this was on lap number 16 for the MJK Sim Racing driver, side by side there with one of our GT3s who came across and upset his balance, and into the barrier he went there. That was a tiny touch, but Victor Van Ziest, that was it. Front left suspension damage, and unfortunately I think the team's saying they could not get the car repaired, and well, heartbreaking if so, but just the smallest of touches there, and it all went very wrong. We did have this for Martin Kenyon on lap number 17. And well, your GT4 driver for MJ Race Tech, he was on the wet tyre, and when this happened, went very wide there through turn 7 into 8, went wider, and in the end found the barriers, unfortunately, and had a brief biff with the barrier, and that brought him to a halt. Harry Langford had this on lap number 19, the Type 2 Next Gen driver on the wet tyre, gliding his way in towards turn number 6 and 7. As he came into 8, went onto the brakes, and the rear of the car completely let go. You could see it was swivelling a bit, and we had to try and catch the car. And did so well, but lost the place there to Jean Breitenbach. As we do also see what happened to Niels Kula and Bill Daniels. It's a bit of an instant for them. Well, this was Niels Kula for Access Simsports sim coach. Bill Daniels, I think, was a separate instant. Breaking down the white line on the outside. No grip out there as he made his way into turn 5, and Niels Kula being sent, sliding like he's in an ice rink, to a halt before getting it back together. And Bill Daniels, in parallel, had this happen to him in GT3, and the Access Simsports sim coach driver made his way through turns 6, 7, and 8, and as he did so, got caught up behind the 9PP Cherry Lion car and tapped on the rear and went around as a result. But some mistakes being made by drivers, no doubt about it. We go back to your live racing. Now, there has been an incident that has happened off camera, we believe, for none other than the machinery of Jordan Maymar. We haven't got a replay of that, but it's definitely gone a bit wrong, as we do have two relatives on screen. And we do apologise for that. That just seems to be a small glitch with our screen. But as the drivers make their way on around right now, again, showing the tyre compounds that our drivers are running. We can definitely see here what is that mixture of compounds that everyone has on the cars right now. But the majority of the field on wet tyres. There are some drivers who are gambling me on the slicks, including Stefan Tietz. And sadly, we have had a tow to the pit lane, I believe, for Max Wheeler. So Wheeler, one of the stalwarts of the slick tyre, has had it go wrong. Danny Phillips has picked up a meatball flag in GT4. And, oh, it's been Leighton Austin goes round there. Coming through turn 7 into 8. And the sim coach by Glasstep Racing Drive gets it all sorts wrong. And the car just completely ejects itself out, stage left. And now gets it back together. But not the way we wanted to go whatsoever. Your number 17 driver getting himself back on the run. We've got a black flag for Ryan Stringer. That will be for instant points most likely. And, well, I think we're going to be seeing a few drive-through penalties here today. Hopefully no disqualifications. That's the last thing we want to see. As Ben Bennyworth comes into pit lane, and he is going onto the slick tyre already, is the Quaintmaster Motorsport driver. So he's come back in, gone to the slicks, and then he makes his way out of the pit lane here. Very quick stop, very limited amount of fuel going in, given he had already gone to the wet tyre and put fuel back in the car. So therefore, Ben Bennyworth deciding, let's get on the slick nice and early. He's got to make it out of the pit lane. That's got plenty of water waiting for him. But Bennyworth deciding the risk is worth it here. And, well, let's see how far he can go as Gareth Newton comes up behind him. And, well, the GPX Simsport Xenon driver from Wales right now, having Ben Bennyworth behind him, making a move there. And, oh, well, Newton just trying to make his way further forward. Scott Kostrich, meanwhile, continues his way on around. And as he does so, the GPX Simsport Vertex driver finding himself as well in a bit of a lonely space in 13th place. Hoping perhaps he can make some ingress in towards the top 10 once again. But we do have some replays to bring you, for instance, including this for Max Wheeler. So this was Wheeler making his way very slowly through the chicane, and as he came through turn number 16, tried to get the power down, and, well, driver behind the 144 did not realise how long it was going to take Wheeler to get the power down, and that was contact between himself and your 144 GT4, I believe, unless I misread the number off the back of the car. And, well, unfortunately, Max Wheeler being turned. That was Ryan Stringer was in contact with, and I think that's what sent Stringer over the instant point limit for a drive-through penalty, as Wheeler having that to tow. But we come back to your live racing. And as we do so, still more to come between all these drivers, no doubt about it. More excitement in the wings. We head closer and closer towards the halfway point of the race. And as we do so, well, the big questions now will be who has got it right on going to the wet tyre and who gets back onto the slick at the right time. Drivers are struggling out there. We've had instance for Harvey Wheeler. We've had instance for Adam Wilson-Weir. Nobody is getting through this race unscathed without a spin, it would seem, at the moment, or an error. Unless your name is Marley Joff in GT3. And hold up a second. What's happened in GT4? Because we've got Brandon Dyer leading the way, and, well, it must be where Marinko Jornowski did not pit until lap 16 to go onto the wet tyre. So Jornowski in the end did have to go to the wet because he could not hold on anymore, and that's why Brandon Dyer has got such a gap right now, 17 seconds over Stephen Donnelly, because Dyer decided to dive straight in to the wet tyre in lap 14 of the GT4 race. Stephen Donnelly followed pursuit, as did Thomas Pugh, but already was quite a gap ahead, and it has worked out very nicely for Brandon Dyer, who is absolutely flying out there right now as the altitude for him eSports driver. And, well, this could be a race that is definitely heading his way. But, of course, Marinko Jornowski, now the story is he's got to pick his way through. As he makes his way up through the chicane and turn number 16, battling with stability of the car there and building up the speed behind Adam Wilson-Weir and Thomas Pugh. But how this wet weather has completely turned the GT4 race upside down for some drivers, as Max Wheeler's been involved in a further incident that's going to cost him even more time in GT4. He's still out there on the slick tyre trying to struggle on, it should be said, as Danny Phillips is into the pit lines. Look out of my commentary booth window, and he's currently serving a penalty, and I think the car had to be towed there as well. But Wilson-Weir goes a bit deep into the turn 17 hairpin. hairpin, but there seems to be a grippier line out there as these drivers come towards the end of this lap. What is for them in the GT4 race, lap number 20, and they come to the end of the first half of the race. Still 45 minutes and a final lap to go for everyone. Johnowski makes his way down and towards turn number 1. Adam Wilson-Weir and Thomas Pugh right in front. And Stephen Donnelly, meanwhile, having a bit of an exchange there, one of the GT3s, but he's comfortably in second place at the moment for Simcast Racing. And, well, Simcast Racing, of course, announcing at the end of last week their new technical partnership with Coach Dave Academy, and expect to see the CDA logos, or Coach Dave Academy logos, on the car in the coming rounds, where we are showing off that technical partnership, helping them get data with regards to their practice and also their coaching, and helping their drivers push even harder. But K-Team cheering on Russ Fowler and saying, come on, Russ, keep pushing. And here is Russell Fowler right now, the man who's definitely made some heroics out there, but he's also been involved in a couple of spins. And the Brino eSport with Flux Livery's driver, 1.4 seconds ahead of Stefano Pellegrino. His next target is Scott Kostrich, who's further up the road by 6 seconds. Fowler's pace right now, definitely not too strong out there. He's struggling with these conditions. He's got to try and get his head back down. Now, speaking of the struggle, on lap 21, he had this happen to him. So this was Fowler at the time, battling with Kostrich through turns 7 and 8. And as he came in towards the last part of the braking zone, took all the curb, and the left-hand side of the car had no grip, lifted up, and on that wet patch went for a spin, but thankfully no contact with the barrier. Adam Wilson-Weir, meanwhile, had this happen just a little bit later. This was your GT4 driver, Type 2 in Next Gen, battling at the time, and as he made his way into the braking zone, Harvey Wheeler looked up the inside, came in very hot, and tapped Wilson-Weir on the back, and at that point did everything he could to help Wilson-Weir get it straightened out, and well done to him for doing so. But then it was Wilson-Weir battling there, Marinko Jornowski, who he knocked about a little bit. I don't think Jornowski would have appreciated that, and since then he has got past, and this is what happened on lap number 20. In fact, no, this was the replay of what just happened, essentially. And then we had this lap late on lap 21. We do apologise. And this was in the long Segway train. And they were all caught up behind. Oh, that was a bit of a scramble there. And Wilson-Weir went for a move. And in the end got into contact there with, I believe, I want to say that was the car of... Well, I think that was none other than Max Wheeler there, who was a lap down. And Adam Wilson-Weir being caught out. Marinko Jordanowski. And then gaining the place. For what's the situation? A crazy situation at that, but all drivers able to survive it just about. But we do come on back, and as we do, still more to come in this race, no doubt about it, as all these drivers continue to impress, and also trying not to stress too much about these wet weather conditions. But definitely Adam Wilson-Weir probably getting the short stick with regards to what happened, as Russell Fowler still pushing on. Scott Kostrich, and he's actually gaining time on Kostrich very rapidly. It was 209.87 for Fowler that last lap. He's flying out there right now. He's got the pace to match the top 3 in GT3. We'll have to wait and see if that stays that way. As Jean Bretemat, meanwhile, running 6th in GT3, keeps Harry Langford behind, or does he for long? As we do see there, the next gen with Type 2 machines getting closer and closer, the GT3 and the GT4. Adam Wilson-Weir won't be too pleased it is being left away from what is Marinko Jornowski. And right now, Langford's going to try and go up the inside, but finds Jornowski is there, and there's no way through as Bretemat makes it all the way around the outside. And lovely bit of driving there from Bretemat, using all the road, wary of the GT4 on his inside, and now just simply trying to lose what is Harry Langford in the spray. We do lose visibility of Langford. You can see a set of headlights, but nothing more than that. But Russell Fowler has just found his way off camera past Scott Kostrich. Kostrich is struggling in these wet conditions. He's made that move at turn 17 from what we're hearing. So Fowler up in the 13th place on GT3. And meanwhile, we do see Brady back here just holding off Harry Langford for 6th in the class at the moment. But looking back to Stefano Pellegrino, he's getting closer to Kostrich as well. Kostrich is struggling a little bit. There's Fowler going through the picture, and Pellegrino goes around the outside there of Robin Noel Brown's GT4, and keeping pursuit. As meanwhile, battle commences for 7th place in GT4, as this is Ryan Stringer versus Alex Fretwell. And Stringer trying to go around the outside, a lot more confidence with regards to grip on those left-hand side tyres for turn number 12, and Stringer does take the place back there. Lovely bit of work from Stringer, bouncing over the curbs, and down they come in towards the left-hander of turn number 16. Does he get the better run off the corner? No, he does not. He actually glides into the barrier there and, well, decides to give a bit of a love tap on the rear right quarter panel. And as they make their way onwards, that gap at the start of the straight was 4 attempts. Little by little, it comes down, equal in the draft. And we see there your GT3 making its way on through. I believe that is going to be the car there of none other than Luke Van Goertel coming through. And in the end, Alex Fretwell decides not to go for it, but instead simply stay behind. As Stringer takes the white line there under braking, and that causes the car to wobble. Stringer goes very deep at the turn 17 hairpin. It's not enough there for Fretwell to be able to make a move. As meanwhile behind, you can see that Jack Wyborn running 9th in GT4. keeping Brad Pickett behind for now. We do still have your slick runners out there. Ben Bennyworth, Joey Ireland and Jordan Maymar all struggling on, I do believe, in GT3. And we have Stefan Tietz and Max Wheeler in GT4 still running on the slick tyre. But the slick right now gradually getting ready to come back into its element potentially. That spray is definitely going away little by little. You can see there right now it's nowhere near as noticeable, and when it becomes a small whisper on the straighter sections of the circuit, like for example where they're going through now, more curved, but the point is they're flat out, if that spray starts to become quite limited or negligible, that's when you want to go back to the slick tyre. So I don't think we're too far away from a slick tyre, as that's a car parked up underneath the camera. Not quite sure who that was. Was that Joey Ireland? Yes, it was. The Altitude 3M eSports driver parks up there in an island of his own, and with damage to the car, I think he is out of the race. I don't see him coming back from that. As meanwhile, Jean Breiterbach definitely in a blink and you'll miss it moment as he defends there versus Harry Langford. We'll get a replay of what's happened to Joey Ireland shortly, but Breiterbach right now going as defensive as possible versus Langford for 6th place in the GT3 class. Langford trying to go all the way around the outside to inside, and well goes, so that you can see that dry line really starting to form. Langford too wide into the chicane, gets on the inside there, but unfortunately just takes a bit too much curve. The rear lets go. Breiterbach still fights it too wide all the way through. Great respect between these two drivers, but in the end Harry Langford does make it work out as we jump aboard with Jean Breiterbach, and well, we can get an idea of the spray, but also you can see down to earth the drying line as Breiterbach wiggling the car left and right. I think right now just trying to make sure he's got some tyre temperature. Coming down towards the hairpin here. Does he go for the move? Looking around the outside. If he's going to go for it, it's either going to be a dummy or he's going to go all the way around the houses. And the answer is it is neither in the end. Oh, as there's a car around, that is Van Goertel's gone for a spin. So Van Goertel's had a bit of an issue and he drops down from what was the top 5 at GT3 and promotes Harry Langford into it. So Van Goertel with a spin, and well, we'll get a replay of that very shortly. And first, must get a replay of what exactly happened to Joey Ireland. So this was Ireland at the time running by his lonesome for Altitude 3M eSports in the number 21, albeit further down the GT3 field. Oh, and he just simply put the rear right tyre onto the white line and straight into the barrier there, and that's why the car was parked. So you can see all the water where it has really gathered in the runoff area, and Joey Ireland having nowhere to go, and with that damage, it was only a tow. Luke Van Goertel, meanwhile, he was in 5th place in the GT3 class, chasing after Leighton Austin, went into turn 17 hairpin. What did he do wrong? And the answer is he just got a bit too greedy with the corner, and went in too much steering, too much power, all added together to send him spinning around. Great awareness from everyone to stop the car, albeit the poor GT4 of none other. I believe that was Stephen Donnelly, the worst off in that situation. He had to park the car up. We come back to your live racing as we do. Well, Brandon Dyer all over the back of Max Steen, GT3 driver, who's struggling a little bit right now. GT4 leader trying to make a move on a GT3. It's not going to be that easy, to be fair, because the GT3 can very quickly run away through the corners and even on the straights. It's got the greater aero and straight line speed all packaged together. But right now, understanding, that is why we are seeing Max Steen just had a difficult day in the office. But battles going on in GT4, because we've been talking a lot about GT3 recently. Speaking of which, we have Brad Pickett versus Jack Whiteborn for 9th place still in GT4. And, well, as we get closer and closer to the remaining half an hour of this race, we see the circuit is drying, but it's not drying at the rate perhaps we expected. And therefore, we do still have all the dryers out there on that wet compound, barring Ben Bennyworth and Jordan Maymar in GT3, and then Tietz and Wheeler in GT4 at the moment. Pickett looking around the outside, but Jack Wyborn calls his bluff and goes just as deep as him and just parks himself in the way as Pickett having to continue to find a way around. We run on board with the 88 and coming into the chicane here, and as he does so, well, can he find a way through? The answer is no. He can just put pressure on instead as they now sequence their way out of the complex and onto the back straight. But Pickett there not getting the best of runs of the corner. You can see that actually experiencing quite a lack of traction of the car. Meanwhile, Jack Wyborn was actually able to nail it, but immediately pulled to the wetter surface to pull the tyres down. Just up the road to them, here is Jan Lintz battling with Ryan Stringer. Stringer trying to get close enough to make a move. GT3 behind there, minus front bumper, having to wait as Jan Lintz goes very deep into the corner. I believe that is the GT3 tailing them of none other than what would be, unless I'm mistaken, I think that is going to be Matthew Croft there, a damage. And Jan Lintz into the pit lane, interestingly. So, what is this for? Is Rinko Jonovsky also in? I think Gazex right now have made the call, said GT4 drives. We need to come in. We're going back to the slick tyre early. The pace is improving. And if so, it's a gamble. And remember, the thing about going on a wet track to a dry track is the fact where the racing line is typically in the dry, that will be the first part of the circuit that dries up. everywhere else is still wet. So as a slick-shod runner overtakes and any potential moves you can only make on a dry line, but if your rivals know you're on a slick tyre, particularly if the team are able to gather that information from a source such as this broadcast, they will then say essentially just defend on the dry line because the slick runner will not be able to brake into a corner on the wet line. So that's going to default there. As we do say hello to EG5005. And, well, message has been deleted there, but perhaps we'll hear from you again shortly, good sir or madam. But as all the drivers make the one around still, it is a very exciting race out here as Marley Joff leads the way for Sim Coach in GT3. He has a 25-second advantage, but 25 seconds could be completely brushed away in a short period of time for just one small mistake or one misstep on strategy. Speaking of which, we have your official confirmation. Jornowski and Lintz both for Gazix Racing, the GP driver ahead of the ART driver, both going to the slick tyre. Well, if they've timed this right, it will be magical. If they've got it wrong, however, it could see it go from good to bad to worse. Remember, of course, Brandon Dyer taking the lead by going to the wet tyre before Mortars Jornowski, who gambled staying out for 3 extra laps on the slick. Meanwhile, Brad Pickett and Jack Wyborn still fighting. Brad Pickett making the move around the outside there at the carousel. Lovely bit of work there from the 88 driver. And through turns 13 and 14 he goes, and 15 in towards 7th place now in the GT4 class. But remember, this is 7th place on the road, not necessarily on strategy, because we have seen that pit stop for Jornowski and Lintz give some places up. As Brad Pickett now tries to pull away from Wyborn, who stays with him. Well, it's going to be a GT3 on their outside here, looking to try and make the way around. So both drivers be as respectful as they can. As Leighton Austin into the pit lane as I look out my Conte booth window. And, well, it does seem as though more and more drivers start to think about that transition back from the wet to the slick. That dry line is forming, but as we said, remember, there is a dry line. There's nothing more than that. And even that dry line will have some water on it, which means it's not a perfect dry line at the moment. So drivers got to be very careful. You have to drive in a very narrow band of tarmac at first, and particularly on a slick tyre, do not touch the curbs whatsoever. Touch those curbs, those white painted lines, you may as well say goodbye to your race. But Leighton Austin decides it's worth the gamble. Here he comes out the pits, but as he does so, the tyres that come out of the jackets will have to go for a big patch of water before they're able to find that racer 9 in the end, so the temperature will fall off of them, and he's got to try and pump that heat back in as quickly as he can. Can he find a way to make his way onto the podium for the GT3s as a reserve driver today for Sim Coach by Glass Tech Racing standing, and of course for their one and only driver in GT3 of none other than Andy Dawson. Joe Glass not here in GT4 of course due to personal circumstances, so therefore it is the case that Leighton Austin can only substitute for one driver. He can't do both. As they make the one around, James Howarth up the inside of Gareth Newton there, so Howarth comes blazing through, but unfortunately way too hot into turn 1, and the MJ Race Tech driver slips back to 15th place as quickly as he gains it. It's not the way he wanted that to go at all. As Van Gertel's been involved in a further mistake. That's at the chicane there, as a bit of fishtailing for Matthew Croft. What's happened to Van Gertel? Here's a replay. So he was at the time being chased by none other than Matthew Croft, and I believe as he made his way up into the chicane, he's behind John Braterback, trying to chase down 5th place, but lost it on entry there. The car went completely around, and hitting the curb on the apex of 14 will not have helped him with that journey. But with that, it's back to your live pictures. And as we do come back, well, still more to come between all these drivers at the moment. We're not quite there into the final half an hour of this race, nor are we into what is potentially the final stint of this race. Given the fact we are expecting all the wet runners to potentially change their tyres, but of course, will anybody on the wet tyre potentially stay on it for the remainder of the race? Is there calls to do so? Well, it all comes down to how quickly the circuit dries up. If you can find patches of water out there and keep that wet tyre cooled down, you may be able to survive on it, but you will be losing pace eventually because the circuit will get quicker. And the problem is, to keep your wet tyre cool, you'll need to drive off racing line, but the optimum line is the dry line at that point, which the wet tyre, when it goes onto it, will be starting to overheat on, and it will be shredding the rubber off it very quickly. Remember, a wet tyre is, for an equivalent, an effective road tyre, albeit a racing road tyre, where it has tread blocks on it to disperse water. A dry tyre is a slick tyre, no tread blocks on it. That's why slicks are not legal on the road, because they can't disperse water. Has no grip to offer in the wet, particularly when standing water is concerned, but it will provide the optimum grip as drivers make the way on around. That is going to be the hard part of the story. But as we do see there, EG at 5005, turn on Jan Lintz. He's doing a good job, to be fair, Ijan, but remember, he's now in the gambling stage, where he and Jornowski, both the Gazix GT4 drivers, have both gone to the slick tyre early. Speaking of which, Thomas Pugh is going to the slicks in the pit lane, but look where he is compared to where Jornowski and Lintz are. Let's look to the blimp camera. He's right by the stadium pit lane. Meanwhile, Rinko Jornowski just making his way underneath it, albeit that's the blimp angle heading in towards the hairpin. So the theory is that Pugh right now is most likely going to be coming back out ahead. And we'll have to wait and see if that's the way it goes. As meanwhile, Jack Wyborn gambles on strategy. So Wyborn has done a second pit stop. That's the last one he'll do today, most likely. Or his fault is he stays on his wet tyres, only puts fuel in the car. Wyborn is going for the win here, but it is the ultimate gamble. Just simply put fuel in and pray now he can keep those tyres cool for the remaining half an hour and the final lap. If he can do it, it is going to be a huge payoff. If he can't do it, he may lose everything he's trying to gain here today. More drives into pits. James Howarth as well, going to the slick tyre and a little bit of fuel as well. Thomas Pugh has left the pits, and he comes out ahead of Rinko Jornowski. So there's the damage dealt by Jornowski's gamble, as it was for staying 3 laps longer on the slick tyre before, as the rain was falling, before going to the wet. He's essentially now lost out on the strategic lead and on the on-track lead. But what can Jornowski do at this point? It does seem as though perhaps 2 wins in a row, maybe heading off into the distance. As Brandon Dyer, he sees the writings on the wall for his tyres. He comes into the pit lane here. So the 58 driver heads on down pit road, leader of GT4, and he decides it's time to get in. But is he going to put a set of slicks on? And my gut feeling says yes, he will, and he'll have the confidence that if he meets any wet runners out there, he'll beat them all. No, that's not good. They're coming out the pit lane, and who was that into the barrier? That, I believe, was Ryan Stringer, unless I'm mistaken, who's just had a big knock to the barrier. Yes, it was, and the future class racing driver achieving what one of our other drivers did at Indianapolis, which is finding the pit exit wall and going into it. The last thing anybody wants to do, and well, he's been able to achieve it, sadly. And well, it's going to be very rough there as he now gets himself back together. But for Stringer, definitely now he's got to lick his wounds on that one and hope it hasn't done too much fatal damage to the car. James Bostock, meanwhile, we come back to here, battling with Jack Wyborn. And, well, Bostock yet to take his second pit stop, most likely for fuel. Meanwhile, Jack Wyborn has made his second stop up the inside. So, the 166 G-Pixels for Onyx driver yields the position there for 6th place to GT4 driver Jack Wyborn. Understandably here in a different strategic space as GT3's trying to chop their way into the pit lane. Is that Charlie Devlin coming in? Yes, it is. So Devlin's in as he does so, safely making his way into the pit lane, comes in from second in GT3, and this will be most likely to go to the slick tyre, or at least put the fuel in to get him to the end, if not the slick. Marley Joff, meanwhile, stays out there another lap and leading right now by a huge advantage, he'll feel. So he's got all the time and real estate to play with here. He can definitely turn down the wick of this race a little bit and choose to pit as late as possible to go onto the slick tyre if he feels it's the right thing to do, because he's got so much time to burn that therefore he can make a bit more of a gamble out. We can make a bit more of a gambit out of it rather than the gamble. As we do see Harvey Wheeler in the pits and Harry Langford as well coming down pit road. You see him there in the rear right. The GT3 field are definitely now thinking about going onto that slick tyre. Charlie Devlin's onto it as Leighton Austin carries his way on around. But as all the drivers head onwards, and we say hello to Andy Dawson, who's tuned it in, who couldn't be here today. And well, a bit of running back and forth banter there with regards to sim coach drivers not racing in wet weather conditions. And we do see that in the YouTube chat, which is great. Leighton Austin, meanwhile, well, pushing his way onwards on the slick tyre. Now, for Austin, where does he come out in all of this? Harvey Wheeler is leaving the pit lane, so I think Austin's lost quite a bit of time here. In fact, Wheeler makes his way back out. He emerges 5th on the road behind Devlin to the tune of 12 seconds. So that would mean he is effectively 3rd at the moment in GT3, with Matthew Croft and Luke Van Goertel still to take a second pit stop, which they'll need to do for the fuel in the car. The car can't make it on a single stop unless they do a mammoth amount of fuel saving, which at this circuit is probably not possible given the number of acceleration zones you do have and the lack of ability to fuel save off of other cars typically. You've only got 2 long straights, but otherwise you've got a lot more connecting parts which are definitely going to use the fuel up that you save. Marley Joff into the pit lane from the lead of GT3. The Simcoach driver comes in and we'll have plenty of real estate to work with. Half a lap essentially to Charlie Devlin. So I think this is going to be a pretty straightforward pit stop for Joff. Just simply get it in, get the slicks on, take your time, get it out of the pit and get going. Meanwhile, Stephen Donnelly also in. There's Brad Pickett and also Alex Fretwell. So GT4 leaders in. But remember, Brandon Dyer came in before them, has put the slicks on already. So here he goes. He's ahead of Jack Wyborn, who has stayed on wet tyres and gambled just putting fuel in. There is Jack Wyborn making his way through the final corner right now. Well, the MRC 491 try in terms of his pace at the moment. Well, he's not too far off the pace of Brandon Dyer, at least for now. But remember, those wet tyres will really start to lose life. And he's still got 26 minutes in the final lap to go. I think it's brave of him to gamble his Wyborn and MRC 491, but I think this is going to be folly in the end. They may be able to prove otherwise, but James Bostock follows him right now, still yet to pit. And then you do have Marinko Jordanovski, who's now on a slick tyre. How quickly can he close down Wyborn, and can he chase down Brandon Dyer for the win, having led before the wet weather came, but now he's got to find a way to get that lead back. We do have Ryan String into the pit lane with a meatball flag and also a black flag, which will mean that he's going to deserve a penalty of some description. So it's gone wrong for Stringer in the pit lane. And one of the other drivers getting it wrong as well, it would seem. But still more pit stops playing out. We've got Max Dean into the pit lane. Kenneth Baird has continued on a wet set of tyres. He's already made 2 trips to the pits, albeit the first one was not for good reasons. It was for repair work on the car. And the second one was to get the wet tyres on the car. And so right now, Baird is just simply trying to make sure that he gets into this race and gets some points. An easy feat. As meanwhile, we had a bit of an incident for Adam Wilson-Weir. He's gone wide at turns 7 and 8. And the Type 2 with Next Gen Drive gets himself back together. As he does so, doesn't lose any places, but loses a lot of time to Thomas Pugh. And I suspect it's where essentially he's found a wet patch on a set of slick tyres, and suddenly the car has been completely pulled away. But as we do have a pit stop for Matthew Croft, so he's in. Also, Luke Van Goertel's in. Jean Breitenbach makes way on through. That's in GT3. So Breitenbach back up into 6th place now. Van Goertel behind. And then we do see Matthew Croft right there with Van Goertel. And both drivers just simply going onto the slick tyre, putting the fuel in. Nothing dramatic about their pit stops. And Scott Kostrich, meanwhile, he's still yet to come in for a second pit stop. So he's trying to survive just that little bit longer. As Jordan Maymar has had to tow to the pit lane. Now, something's gone wrong for Maymar. While the limited number of drivers who braved it all the way through the wet weather on the slick tyre, it hasn't worked out. And Jordan Maymar's race now going from good to bad to disaster. That's got Kostrich carrying on, and well, he does so. He's trying to chase down Croft and Van Goertel, but he's just got to get his head in the game and realise, of course, he's in a bit of a strategic battle further down the order as he's still got a pit stop to make. But there's going to be another trip to the pit lane for Matthew Croft, but it won't be a happy one because he's just picked up a drive-through penalty for track limit, and that will be for 16 plus instant points. So sadly, for Croft, it's gone wrong there, and well, now he's going to have to make amends by coming on in. And remember, we have 16 instant points where you get a drive-through penalty at 26 and you are disqualified. That does not change the endurance races, the 90-minute races compared to the 60-minute features. We do have a very strict set of instant points there to require drivers to be as respectful as possible and mindful, not just their fellow competitors, but also track limits. Marinko Jordanovski on the back of Jack Wyborn. So here he goes for what is the first of 2 moves he needs to make if he wants to take a victory here today in GT4. Albeit he's got to make this move in Wyborn and then close down 18.5 seconds and to make the pass on Brandon Dyer, which I think is going to be quite a wishful thought. But here goes Jordanovski then versus the wet shod runner of Wyborn. And Wyborn here, of course, only fuel to the end as GT3 goes on through, and the GT3 field tries to cleanse its way past the GT4s, and that's Ross Fowler having to back off there. And I do believe he's minus a rear wing based on that camera angle, although say it's not so. Yes, he is missing his rear wing, but Jordanovski looking around the outside. 3 wide into the braking zone they go initially, and Jordanovski hung out to dry there. No place for him to make a move. Jack Wyborn, they're using the GT3s to his advantage, and well, right now you can see that it was none other than Ben Bennyworth there, still going hunting for positions. How far can he go chasing after Russell Fowler? But Jonathan stays behind for now. We've got Kostrich and Matthew Croft both into the pit lane. Croft to service penalty. Now Kostrich to come in for his final pit stop of the day. Hopefully he'll be saying. Now we to go onto the slick tyres and put some fuel in. But Jordanovski gets the better run coming out to turn 16, and that's going to enable him to gradually draft his way past Wyborn, who immediately swaps sides. I mean, we're trying to go through the middle of the 2 of them. That is going to be one of your GT3s there, albeit in the end it all works out. And your GT3 comes on through, and Marinko Jordanovski on the brakes there, does get it stopped nicely. What about the GT3 car that goes a bit deep? Well, they get it stopped as well just in the nick of time. Quite the shape up there between all of your GT3 and GT4 drivers, as that's Stefano Pellegrino, who I think had a bit of a panic moment on the brakes there as he made his way into the hairpin, realising he was braking on slick tyres onto a wet patch, but just about got it stopped there. And I wouldn't be surprised if the ABS was dialed up to its wet settings, just in preparation for that. As the Gezix ALT driver makes way all through. Well, meanwhile, we still do have Marty Johnson leading this race in GT3. 14.1 seconds ahead of Charlie Devlin, and it's a further 16 seconds to Harvey Wheeler. Here is Devlin for context. The future first-class racing driver, carrying on. And his pace right now is proving to be a little bit quicker than Joff, but Joff does have plenty of time to play with, so therefore he can afford to lose a second a lap and still be safe. As Harvey Wheeler, meanwhile, well, definitely on course here for his first podium of the season on the road. He does have a couple of contentious points, which may be brought up with the stewards after this race. He has been a bit hot-headed in the braking zone today, but sometimes you've got to be a hothead in order to make moves happen, but there have been some contacts with the 1-3-3 drive. Can't think about those. All he's got to think about is keep it on the road and don't make a mistake like that, because now he's able to cut track limits, able to give up some time for a slowdown. And on top of that, he now has cooled down slick tyres, which have got some water on them, and he'll need to get that water off rather quickly, as otherwise his grip levels will drop. So Harvey Wheeler makes a small mistake, but he does have 15 seconds or so between himself and Leighton Austin, who makes no such mistake. They're coming through turn 6 into 7, and the sim coach by Glass Tech Racing Drive still pushing on. But further back, James Bostock and Thomas Pugh having a bit of a battle. And Bostock still yet to take his second pit stop here. Bostock is going the longest of everybody in this middle stint. So the GPXs for Onyx driver also still on a set of wet tyres, although the pace does not look well in that car. I think Bostock is having to save fuel to the point he's having to sip it right now. He's doing his best impression. If anybody remembers Top Gear, where Jeremy Clarkson tried to see how long you could go on a single tank of diesel in an Audi, well, I think James Bostock is doing his best impersonation of that skip from Top Gear, because that does not look to be a McLaren GT4 that is going at full pace. Not just because the wet tyres are worn down, but also because I think that fuel tank right now is close to spluttering. But as he makes his way on down here, he's got Adam Wilson-Weir closing up. And where is Bostock going to come out when he pits? That's the big question. I suspect it's going to put him towards the back end of the top 15 of GT4. But credit to him for going as long as he has. He's definitely avoided a lot of the roughage in the middle stint as a result of just staying out. As Wilson-Weir tries to make the move there on Bostock. Well, Bostock does in the end decide it's time to go into the pits, and I think he was going to, otherwise he would have parked up on the road on the next lap with no fuel. And the GPXs for Onyx driver now just need to hope the car's going to make it all the way to its pit box. So I'm sure he has saved the right amount of fuel to do so. It may just be spluttering to its box, but he gets there. It's only a short run. So Bostock goes longest everybody in the middle stint, and we'll have to wait and see where he comes out as a result of it. As Jan Lintz now moves back up to 8th place in GT4 and is steadily gaining on the top 5. So there's still life in this race for the 555 driver for Gazek's ART. And could he seal a top 5 here today in the absolutely comical livery? I say comical because it has been inspired by comic books of the 80s and 90s. And actually a lovely car there is being run by the German driver. As he does so, our battles have calmed down to a degree. Most of the gaps now have spread out, and this is really into what is survival territory. And speaking of survival, that was Leighton Austin having a very wide trip there and being unlapped by none other than what was the machinery of Gareth Newton. So even Leighton Austin can make mistakes with turns 5 and 6. We've seen a few GT3s get it wrong through there, particularly when in the company of a GT4 and needing to find a way past it. But just to bring up to speed then with a strategic situation, everybody now has completed their second stop who's still running this race. Although we have one driver who's trying to brave it on the wet tyre, whereas everyone else is on the slick. So Jack Wyborn there leaves some paint behind on the inside of turn 12. And it is Jack Wyborn who's your wet runner at the moment, who just gets passed by Thomas Pugh, who now moves up into 4th place in GT4. How was that move made? Here's a quick replay to explain. So this was the run into the braking zone. I think Wyborn's going to go very deep under braking here. And the answer is yes, he does. He just does not have the ability to stop the car. Goes deep, and Thomas Pugh just simply squeezes on through with no issue. And well, he'll be happy with that. As we also just had this for James Pallett. So things gone from good to bad to backwards for Pallett. And the Quench 9 pace is going for a Cherry Lime car. GT4 driver there on slick tyres, comes off the wet patch, goes onto the brakes, and the car snatches to the left, given the left-hand side tyres were still on a wet patch, and we had to grab the car and wrestle it back under control, as otherwise he would have collided with the GT3s around him. So good work on Pallett to pull the car away, but not the way he wanted it to go whatsoever, as we head back to your live racing. But as we do come on back, well, now we are going to focus on what is this GT4 battle as Wilson-Weir goes up the inside of Wyborn, and Alex Fretwell says, "Thank you, Adam, for helping me out with that one. I'll take that, and I'll take this off of you as well." But Fretwell right now finds himself under close scrutiny, trying to battle Wilson-Weir. And well, the thing about Adam Wilson-Weir, as we said earlier on, once he gets his teeth into something, he's not going to give up. As meanwhile, goes a bit slowly down the outside. I think Wilson-Weir realised he was understeering onto the wet line, and so backing off there before he had to brake into turn 5 on a wet patch. The Type 2 next-gen driver, well, he wanted to battle it, but understeered out wide, and then had to make sure he lost the place for the better part of keeping himself on the road. Good awareness from Wilson-Weir to do so, but Jack Wyborn now follows. But I think he will gradually drop the wet runner. And that's why we've hidden all the tyre choices now on the left-hand side of the screen in the time tag, because we'll just keep you abreast of your sole wet runner, and that is the car of none other than Jack Wyborn, your 7th place runner in GT4. Otherwise, everyone else is on slicks at this time. But we do have a slowdown penalty with Charlie Devlin. That's for track limits. I suspect that will have happened going through the chicane at turns 14 and 15. And we'll still have a slowdown for Brandon Dyer, who's probably done the same through the chicane. So your drives towards the front of both classes definitely a bit eager, and right now making mistakes right when they perhaps cannot afford to make them, depending on where the instant points are. But to Russell Fowler we come. He battles still with Stefano Pellegrino as they both have to queue up behind the GT4. And Fowler still missing a good portion of his rear wing, if not all of it right now. But the Rhino eSport Flux liveries driver trying to hang on in there, as Pellegrino would like to take that 14th place back off of Fowler. Indeed, Russell Fowler has had a race that's been full of ups and downs, much like you could say at Indianapolis, but this one's definitely had as many downs as it's had ups, although he will always be remembered for that absolute monster overtake he made earlier on versus none other than Martin King. Speaking of him, he's running in 8th at the moment, chasing after Luc van Goertel, who's 16 seconds up the road, but in turn has a 3-second gap to Matthew Croft, who has picked up that drive-through penalty and served it. And Croft has fallen back in behind him in 9th place, and there is Croft, 3 seconds behind, but rapidly closing on King, or at least trying to. But down the backstretch he goes, and we look up the road to Jean Breitenbach, who's still under pressure on Van Goertel for what will be 6th place, as these two make the way on to another lap. Now, in the back and forth battle for what is the 6th place, we have seen that Jean Breitenbach has been the quicker driver in the dry, but meanwhile, Van Goertel's been the quicker driver in the evolving conditions. So, which way will it go is the question. Van Goertel right now, at least, will feel a bit more confident perhaps in the car. Jean Breitenbach, should he be able to hold on to this position until the circuit does become primarily about 75% dry, he may suddenly be able to turn up the pace. But the problem that Breitenbach has, of course, being the leader, is he's the first one to find any GT4 cars in front of him, or indeed any GT3 they're going to put a lap on. Speaking of which, they catch up to the back of Jack Wyborn right through the SS sequence, and Breitenbach has a big slide there on the apex of turn number 6 into 7. The barbecue bread racing drive does keep it under control, and Van Goertel just follows through there, knowing there's no real space to work with. And again, the risk of driving onto those white painted lines in the curves really becoming pronounced, or indeed just driving off of that dry line that is widening. And so here comes Luc van Goertel looking for a move. It's wide enough for 2 now. You can see that white dry line has widened, but here he goes into that braking zone on the outside in towards turn number 11. Can the 007 driver get it done? And on to the brakes he goes, and it's going to be an attempt around the outside to inside, but he goes a little bit deep off the corner, takes the white painted lines and has to back off there, as meanwhile behind a bit of a battle unfolding as well. And I believe that's Jack Wyborn ends up parking up, and Wyborn in the end is going to tow to the pit lane. Surely then that is to go to the slick tyre and just realise that he can't hold on any longer, as Jan Lintz has taken that place off of him. It'll be a bit unconventionally. Can we get a quick replay of what exactly happened there? And the answer is yes, we can. So Jan Lintz followed him down into the braking zone. Your GT3 battle right in front. Wyborn made his way onto the anchor. Jan Lintz on the outside. And too wide they entered, and Wyborn went deeper and deeper and deeper, and Lintz in the end managed to back off, but Jack Wyborn just carried himself so deep, ended up parking up the car, and I think the struggles on the wet tyre have really taken their toll on the British driver. But Jan Lintz now up in the 7th place in GT4 as a result. Let's see if Wyborn makes way back out there. I think he will, but after an extensive tow time. As being on Jean Breitenbach, still trying to keep Van Goertel behind him as they make the way past Adam Wilson-Weir, who in turn is still hoping to chase down Alex Fretwell for 5th place in GT4, although to do so, he's going to need to gain a bit more time, as Fretwell has run away from him on that previous lap to the tune of 4 seconds. But plenty of battling between all these drivers, and the barbecue bread racing at number 72 driver trying to hold on to this 6th place as if it's a win, but to him it feels like it's a win given he started in 10th place. With Van Goertel, there he is, we right aboard with the Dutchman, and this time decides to go for the switchback here at turn number 8. Gets it onto the apex curb, and lovely line, but Jean Breitenbach does get the better traction off the corner by going on the natural razor line, going deeper into the corner. And well, right now Van Goertel has the draft here as they power their way all the way up towards turn number 11. We're going to stay on board with this battle for a bit as they head in towards the braking zone for the sharp left-hander. Van Goertel then looks one way then the other, looks the inside, but finds the water there and has to chuck the car to the right. And Van Goertel wanted to make the move, but got ahead of himself there, forgot there's still water on the line that's on the inside of that braking zone, and sadly losing out. So he's now got to reset and do it all over again, but well done to him for realising it at the right time and not collecting the rear of the South African driver in front. It would have been tears between the two of them otherwise. As Christian Ablasser, meanwhile, let's not forget about the Kazakh GP driver, Well, he started in 16th place on a miserable qualifying performance, but he's on the back of Thomas Weston right now. So the fight is on between these two for the final spot in the top 10 of GT3. So still could be some excitement between them before all is said and done. Albeit to be able to make this move happen, he's going to need to definitely try to figure out quite the move, no doubt about it. Be a bit brave if he wants to get this done. We will see what he can do. On his way off of the corners right now, and well, Ablas are just waiting in the wings, 6 tenths behind. But GT4, no real battles on at the moment as such. Everyone keeping their cool, although it could be said Thomas Pugh is closing on Stephen Donnelly quite quickly. He has taken another 8 tenths out in for that third place. There is Donnelly for reference to Simcast Racing Drive, typically associated has been a master of wet weather conditions. If anybody does remember, of course, what was season 11 of the Thursday GT3 Championship at the Portimao circuit, where Stephen Donnelly pulled off the absolute miraculous win that surprised everybody in his class. Indeed, on that day, nobody could stop the Portuguese driver from being an absolute weapon in the wet. But as he comes on through, and all these drivers making the way on around there. Well, right now, Stephen Donnelly with a 15-second gap to Marinko Jornowski. His focus has got to be on one thing and one thing only, and it is keeping Thomas Pugh at bay. As we see the battle between none other than what is Luc van Goertel and John Breitenbach make its way on past your third and fourth place runners in GT4. So therefore, the two battles interdict each other for a brief moment, and John Breitenbach just being allowed to stay safe a little bit longer. We do have a black flag, unfortunately, for this man, Stefano Pellegrino, and that will be for instant points. So that's going to see him have to come into the pits for a drive-through penalty. If not in this lap, then within the next 3, as otherwise he'll be upgraded to disqualification. And nobody wants to see him lose out the prospect of some points. So he immediately comes in, but what this will do is most likely see him lose 15th place to Scott Kostrich. You see a driver going straight on there. Hold the phone! Who's that? Is that Brandon Dyer? That's your leader in GT4 who goes deep. So Brandon Dyer, big mistake there. Coming back on, but how far has he lost time to Marinko Jornowski? The answer is he's lost a lot. There is Jornowski right now. That gap that was 16 seconds or so is going to come plummeting down to 6 seconds. So 10 seconds lost there for Brandon Dyer, and a slowdown to serve as well for those track limits that he's breached. Even though he can't really gain any time out there, but the iRacing shooting system says that if you've got the course, you need to give the time back. And right now, Marinko Jornowski will know that he could potentially get that win back with only 5 seconds between him and Brandon Dyer. But what went wrong for Brandon Dyer? That's the question. Here's an answer. So it was heading down into the braking zone for the hairpin at turn number 17. The altitude for him, eSports 58, went onto the brakes, and as he did so, just went straight. Nothing more than that, but unfortunately, there's as far as our camera goes, and well, all we can imagine is what's happened is the car is locked up there with any water that's been caught between the brake disc and what is the actual caliper itself, and the Altitude 3M cars just had to simply let it go eventually, but that is a huge lock-up if so. And, well, that could definitely be a bit of a scary moment, because every time he goes into that braking zone now, is he going to have the same problem happen again? Well, he won't want that to happen, I can assure you of that. But, meanwhile, we come back to John Breitenbach, and Luc van Goertel still fighting over 6th. Meanwhile, behind them, Martin King and Matthew Croft are getting closer together as well. 14-second climb fighting for 8th in GT3. So still some stories to be completed here in this visit to Miami. As Van Goertel goes to move on the inside this time, he's going to risk it all on the wet patch. But is it going to work? The answer is no. He outbrakes himself. And for Van Goertel, he tried once, didn't work. Tried twice, hasn't worked again, but this time he pays the price for it. Meanwhile, Matthew Croft and Martin King, and it's going to be King defending on the wet road. Matthew Croft tries to come across there. Martin King still on the inside, and well, I think King's going to be saying, Matthew, I can't just simply disappear because you want me to. And in the end, Matthew Croft being made to wait a little bit longer, but we can see that Martin King able to brave the wet patch of the circuit and able to defend, and Matthew Croft now having to wait again. We can see Croft means real business here with how close he gets to the back of King's car coming through the chicane. He's got a pace advantage, but the problem is he's got to find a way to get alongside. Good suggestion there from Denny Plough in the YouTube chat about Brandon Dyer. Did he just lose concentration for a brief moment? Perhaps forgot his braking zone and deciding to let the car roll deep rather than trying to stamp on the anchors any further than he already had. As they all make the way on down. Well, right now we can see there Matthew Croft having to pick his way up the inside of GT4s. Much like Martin King, no real opportunity here to go for a moving corner exit. This battle definitely building up to a bit of a boiling point, as Luc van Goertel, after making that mistake, has now lost time to John Breitenbach. Will he be able to come back? Meanwhile, in GT4, just behind our GT3 battlers, it's still Stephen Donnelly versus Thomas Pugh, and Act Systems what may be designed, whether it's Croft or Pugh in their respective classes, both are still looking to move forward. The team that flies the banner for their livery designer, loud and proud, but right now Thomas Pugh definitely Wanting that third place spot on the podium, does not want to be denied after what was such a close run for a chance of a podium at Indianapolis. And well, in the end, sadly, it was him being denied. But right now, I want him not to be denied this time around. But will he be able to avoid being denied? We'll have to see. As the Access Sport with Baby Design driver finds GT3's queuing up behind him, and Alex Fretwell is very quickly closing. We could have a three-way fight here for third place in GT4 right at the end. It all comes down to how much time Sonny and Hugh take out of each other and whether Fretwell can keep up this pace. As Ben Bennyworth into the pit lane again. The Kratos Motorsport driver coming in. Surely then this has got to be a splash and dash because we've got no black flag for him or anything like that. And if so, there's been a mistake on the fuel calculations for him and the team. But this has got to be a very short pit stop then. Will we see any more like this? Perhaps the fuel tank in the GT3 isn't lasting as long as they thought. And well, he's going to come back out here, but a long way down the order, down in what will be, well, there's Scott Kostrich for comparison. Is he going to fall to 14th place here or 15th? As Kostrich is going to go round the outside. Bennyworth on that pit exit line. He can gather more speed out of turn one. The Quamas Motorsport driver will lose tyre temperature with that wet patch. He still stays ahead of Scott Kostrich, at least for now. Jan Lintz also still attacking for Gazek's ART. And, well, making his way on through the carousel on the back of Adam Wilson-Weir. He has caught up to Wilson-Weir. 3 seconds a lap over the last couple of laps. Albeit Wilson-Weir's been struggling a little bit out there. And Lintz has not had any difficulties with GT3s to deal with, nor with the circuit. So yet he could potentially catch him. Or is fuel running dry in the Type 2 next-gen car? As Wilson-Weir shows no signs of hesitating to hammer the throttle. They're going on to the back stretch. So perhaps Wilson-Weir getting his head in the game now and just need Jan Lintz catching up to him to give him the refocus he needed. We'll have to see what's to be for that. As he pounds his way down towards the hairpin. A long way back at the moment. But meanwhile, as he heads up towards the braking zone, we look to Gareth Newton. And the reason we're looking to him is because look who's catching up to him. There is GPX Simsport Xenon's main rival for today, James Howarth. As Howarth looking for a move here in towards turn number 8. He's not going to find it at the moment. They fight over 17th place in GT3. So there are these battles that all start to come together right at the very end. But as they make their way up towards the next braking zone, well, GT4's on the outside. It's not going to help out as Howarth is squeezed to an inside line behind Newton. And Newton here will now try to get himself back on that dry line as best as possible. And on to the brakes they go. And Brandon Dyer, they're putting a lap on one of his fellow GT4 drivers. And Gareth Newton goes very deep. Howarth now is going to look round the outside here in towards turn number 12. And he'll get it done there. And Gareth Newton making a small mistake under braking that proves very costly in reality. So James Howarth up into 17th in GT3. But back up to the GT3 batters for 6th. John Braithwaite versus Luke Van Goertel. And well, these two still together. None other than what is Stefano Pellegrino and Leighton Oster both made errors. Pellegrino's had to tow to the pit lane as a result of his error. Leighton Oster is still going. Oh, and there he is. He's rejoined. He's gone straight on at turn 17, much like Brandon Dyer in GT4. But let's come back to that shortly because here's Luke Van Goertel right now. We're trying to go around the outside of John Braithwaite back at the hairpin. Well, he's got the gripper. He's got the confidence. He's on those slick tyres. Can he make this magically work this time? Well, he's going to go too wide for turns 18 19. You see the rear of that McLaren absolutely dicing on the edge of adhesion. But it's going to be on the inside now towards turn number 1. Give him just enough space to be on the dry line there. The right inside tyre is just creeping onto the wet patch. But Van Goertel on the inside and gets it stopped in time. Moves up in the 6th place then. And John Braithwaite now made to go from being the hunted to the hunter. Can he steal the place back? Well, Van Goertel finds a face on the GT4. That's not ideal there as they make their way up towards turn 5, 6 and 7. But Van Goertel able to stay ahead for now. But we quickly take a look back at what exactly happened to Leighton Austin. Because this was important. The man running in 5th in the class. We made his way into the braking zone here behind the GT3. Then he was putting a lap on. Oh, and he had a big coming together. That was with Pellegrino, I believe. So it wasn't set for instance, and that's why Stefano has had to tow to the pit lane. And Leighton Austin in the end, having to literally go the long way around to get in the car back. Nasty instant between the two of them. And I think a bit of a misunderstanding. But we can't dwell on this for too long. We've got more battling to come as we head back with 2 minutes to go. Stefano Pellegrino towing to the pit lane, which means Max Dean now, who rejoins from a bit of a trip off the road, is now up to 19th place in GT3, inheriting a position. We has picked up a black flag there for the track limits breach, so he's going to have to take a drive-through penalty or a post-race time penalty. He'll probably do it as a post-race time penalty now, I suspect. Given the fact he's got nothing really to lose at this point. Not the way he wanted it to go, however. But with all this playing out, we come back to the GT4 leader as we are getting news in GT4 that Robin Noel Brown has been disqualified from the race for picking up 26 instant points or more. So Noel Brown is out of the race, so he was in 13th. He may be getting up some places the likes of Max Wheeler, James Pallant and Danny Phillips. And well, if so, more places to be lost there right at the end. But why are we looking at Brandon Dyer? He's your leader. It's because behind him now, only what is 3 seconds and rapidly closing behind is Marinko Jordanovski. And at the rate he's closing, well, if Dyer's not his best behaviour, Jordanovski could be with him right at the very end of the final lap. We'll have to see which way this goes in reality, as our leader, Marley Joff, with 50 seconds left, is making his way down the back stretch. So it means for our GT4 leaders, they've likely got at least 1, if not 2 more laps to go, which would be perfect for Jordanovski if he can keep up this rate of closure. And Marley Joff, meanwhile, well, he's so far away from the GT4 leaders at the moment, I don't think he's going to interrupt them. And I think with 30 seconds left, he will be seeing the checker flag the next time around, not this time around. So we will be getting 45 laps here for your sim coach leader in GT3. He's the one who decides how long this race goes on for in terms of the number of laps that are allotted over the 90 minutes. We always go typically to the 90 minutes, if not slightly over. And that's based on rolling 5-lap average calculated from the lead driver. And Marley Joff does go on to lap 45. Barney Flag waves the white flag. We are on to the final lap here at Miami for the GT3s and the GT4s that will follow. But as Stefano Pellegrino drops down the order due to that incident with Leighton Austin, well, meanwhile, Alex Fretwell still trying to chase after Stephen Donnelly and Thomas Pugh, as Pugh has cleared Donnelly. And, well, that gap has opened up enough at this point. And here's a quick replay of how that move was made. And this was Thomas Pugh in getting the move done, and it was because of Stephen Donnelly making a bit of a mistake as he made his way through turns 5 and 6. Oh, there was actually a bit of contact there. Now, we didn't catch this at the time, and that explains how Thomas Pugh got through into third. So it was just simply Donnelly being slightly elbowed wide there by GT3, and, well, Pugh did not hesitate to get that done. But we have got, I believe, what is Livan Goetzel still making his way on through. And then JK Sim Racing driver right now making his way onwards. I see Denny Plugger there mentioning that he's running low on fuel. So therefore Van Goertel's going to try and survive 1 more lap. And if he can, he's got to a whole lap here with a very limited fuel tank. Indeed, a few drivers might be calling right to the end. See what it's going to be. But this race right now absolutely on the limit for some drivers with regards to fuel. Jan Lint still on the limit here, battling with Adam Wilson-Weir for 6th place in GT4. Can he steal it away and gain 8 places since the start, having started 14th place? We will see. But right now he's close, but not close enough to make a sniff of a move here into the braking zone for turn 11. The problem is, of course, that inside line is too wet, so he's got to go around the outside, and that is exactly what Wilson-Weir knows. But meanwhile, we come back to the front of the field because he makes his way through the hairpin. 2 quarters are waiting for the checker flag. And for Marley Joff, it has been back-to-back pole positions. But whilst technical issues denied him at Indianapolis, he won't be denied today here at Miami. For Marley Joff at SimCoach will be your winner in GT3. And what a victory it will be for him in the end. Taking victory by a grand total of 13.5 seconds. Head of double podium finisher Charlie Devlin for Future Class Racing. Not the win from Indianapolis, but it is a second place and keeps him happily in the lead of the championship, with Harvey Wheeler a sizable gap behind. But third in GT4, Thomas Pugh holds on for his first podium of the season for Axis Sport AB Design, ahead of Stephen Donnelly and Alex Fretwell, finished behind, completing the GT4 top 5. But then we do have to come back to GT3 because here it is, Harvey Wheeler in the end, making his way past Adam Wilson-Weir, but he is going to come home to bring home his first podium of the season on the road. Harvey Wheeler, 3rd place in GT3 for Freewheeler Racing, as meanwhile, is it Jan Lintz or is it Adam Wilson-Weir who takes 6th in GT4? It is Jan Lintz who just steals it away in the end by a sliver. Harry Langford's got some time before he gets the finish line. Oh, car round there, who's that parked up? And indeed, that's not the way you want it to go for any driver, but I think that is Ryan Stringer having it go all sorts of wrong. But Harry Langford, meanwhile, have it all go right there for 4th place today in GT3. Epic drive from him, as we see Scott Koshich coming through in the foreground of your camera shot in 15th place in the class. Ryan Stringer then comes on through, and it's been a frustrating race for him, but he takes 17th in GT4, and a bit further behind we will have Leighton Austin complete the top 5 of GT3. Luke Van Goertel survives despite his handicap fuel tank to 6th place in GT3 ahead of Jean Breitenbach, but then we do have a bit more to come, including Matthew Croft in time. More battles out there at the moment, including Patrick Heenan. Oh, Heinen, who makes his way home in 9th place in GT4. Comfortably ahead of Stefan Tietz in the end, who's come all the way through to 10th place in the class. We'll get him across line in a bit of due time. But we must come to this man right now, as he's still got 8 attempts between himself and Marinko Jordanovski. The leader of GT4 is Brandon Dyer. Can he hold on for the final 2 quarters here? Jordanovski has been closing rapidly, but it doesn't look as though it's going to be back-to-back wins for Jordanovski. We have a new GT4 winner. It's Brandon Dyer, ladies and gentlemen, who heads the line and takes his first GT4 class win of the season for Altitude 3 eSports. What a drive and Rico Jornowski losing out by gambling to stay on the slicks for too long when the rain arrived. Thomas Pugh, third place, a lap down the GT4 field, and meanwhile, making his way across the line just in the background, we believe it was Martin King. There he is, and well, the MRC 491 driver will definitely, I think his facial expression there for his photo would have been like that at certain points in the race, but does complete the top 10 there in the GT3 class, and well, he'll be happy to bring home some valuable points on his debut race as a reserve driver. But as everyone cools and calms on down, well, ladies and gentlemen, we've got a couple of moments to take a look back at, but we've also got drivers who definitely need to be praised, including Jan Lintz, 6th place in the M in GT4, but how exactly did he steal the place away right at the end versus what was none other than Adam Wilson? Where here's the replay to explain. And it was in the run out of the final corner. Adam Wilson was made to go wide there by Max Wheeler, and was he trying to get the car back together, overstepped it there through turn 19 and lost the momentum, and literally in practically a photo finish, Jan Lintz stealing 6th place in the GT4 class, and Adam will not be too pleased losing that right at the end. He will enjoy the thrill of the battle, but he won't be pleased with how he lost it right at the finish line, as we do come back to live pictures. And I think with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are actually now going to take a look at those race results subject to Eddie Stewart's inquiries, and here they come. And as our results do come up on screen, of course, we start off, as always, with the GT3 class, the first of our two classes racing in the SimRacing International Transatlantic Trophy Season 1, brought to you on iRacing and powered by trophi.ai. But the big question is, who took victory in round number 2 at the Miami International Autodrome in GT3? The answer, simply put, Marley Joff, making amends for Indianapolis, where technical issues prevented him from being able to take home what could have been that win, and instead making sure it's happened here today for Sim Coach by 13.5 seconds ahead of future class racing's Charlie Devlin. To be fair to Charlie, did very well throughout the race, didn't make any mistakes, and in the end was able to bring home a solid 2nd place, the best part of 30 seconds ahead of Harvey Wheeler for Freewheeler Racing, who definitely got his elbows out here today, pushing hard and making it onto the podium for the first time this season, but there is some question marks with some earlier contacts that he'll want to look back at. Harry Langford, 4th in the end for Type 2 with Next Gen, his best result of the season so far, and a great drive, and if things had worked out differently, it could have been his first podium of the season, but still he'll be pleased with the top 5 and particularly to be the first off the podium. Leighton Austin, as a reserve driver for Sim Coach by Glass Tech Racing, did very well to round off the top 5 there, although some spins as the race went on, costing the chance of his own podium. Luke Van Gertel, 6th there for MJK Sim Racing, and will fight it hard to the very end versus John Breitenbach, and made the move in the late stages, and then had just enough fuel to get to the finish line. A big fear for the Dutch team. But the South African of Breitenbach, he'll be sad he didn't take 6th, but I think he'll also have really enjoyed the battle all the way to the end there for that 7th place finish. Then it was 8th place to Matthew Croft for Axis Sim Sports with Ashley Brooks Design, and we did see him in the end finish 2 seconds ahead of Thomas Weston for STN at Racing, and that was a further 30 seconds back to Martin King for MRC 491, who completed the top 10. Outside the top 10, 11th place best dressed is Christian Ablasser, a lap down, as it was a lap down for Bill Daniels, with Daniels in the end improving as the race went on, although the American driver on home soil still finding it a bit of a tough stage at the moment and having to settle back into that McLaren, particularly with the rain throwing him off balance. But still, he was ahead of Russell Fowler, the Rhino eSport Flux Liveries driver, who, like Indianapolis, had a race and ups and downs, but a few more downs and ups today, sadly, for Russell Fowler. Did pull off an absolutely crazy overtake on Martin King earlier on, a 4-wide overtake, if you will, in towards turn number 8, but sadly, that didn't enable him to finish inside the top 10. He was ahead of Quakemas Motorsports, Ben Bennyworth, with Scott Koschich completing the top 15 for none other than what was the GPX Simsport Vertex team, and it was also a lap down for James Howarth and Gareth Newton. Kenneth Baird, 3 laps down, but will be class 5 for Quench 9 Pixels Pan for Berry Crush. Good to see him finish the race, as did Gav Max Racing's Max Dean, and then we did see 4 laps down. He retired from the race, but classified as the finisher, Stefano Pellegrino. Outside the top 20, we did see 21st there, the first of your classified non-finishers, retirees if you will, Jordan Maymar, who gambled by staying on slicks for as long as possible. Sadly, it didn't work out, and in the end, he found calamity, and it forced him out of the race. Joey Ireland, Simon Quinn, Ian Cable and Lawrence Dodapper all added themselves to the retirement list, with Lawrence Dodapper retiring only 2 laps in with a major incident to the car. Meanwhile, in the GT4 class, here we can see, starting at the very top, Brandon Dyer taking his first win of the season and preventing Rinko Jornowski from making it 2 in a row. The Ultra Triumph eSports driver, in the end, got it right on tyre strategy. That was the difference, and making sure to come in right at the time when the rain started to fall to get the wets on, and the gamble worked out. Although Jornowski was the quicker driver, particularly as the circuit dried up, but he wasn't able to close the gap there for Gazek's GP, and had to settle for second by the Altitude 3M machine. Thomas Pugh, he was the first to finish a lap down as classified, with the GT3 leader lapping all the way out to third place come the end of the final lap of the GT3 race. So Thomas Pugh would finish a lap down for Axis in Sport of AB Design, but hold off to the finish line. Stephen Donnelly and Alex Fretwell with the Simcast Racing and Quench 9 Pegasus Penfra very crush drives all over the back of him right at the finish. Jan Lintz did very well to come all the way through from 14th to 6th. The Gazek ART driver may not have had the highs of Jornowski in terms of points, but definitely put on a great show today, and the German finishing just ahead of Adam Wilson with a Type 2 Next Gen, robbed, you could say, of 6th place, literally only 5 metres from the finish. Brad Pickett, 8th there for Dexterous Motorsports, ahead of Patrick Heenan, with a barbecue bread racing drive fighting his way forward, taking his first top 10 of the season. He'll be very happy with that, ahead of Stefan Tietz and the German driver Axis in Sport Simworks, the only driver who did make the gamble of staying on the slick times work to a degree, and in the end was able to use it to move up into the top 10. Well done, Stefan, for that, given he started from the back of the GT4 field. I think he's going to be very proud of his achievement, given he risked it all, and he has earned himself a top 10 as a result. Niels Kula, best of the rest there for the sister team of Axis in Sport Sim Coach, was 2 laps down as classified, but ahead of James Bostock for GPX in Sport Onyx, who went the longest in the middle stint on the wet tyre, and the gamble almost paid off for a top 10, but not quite. And Max Wheeler, 13th there for Freewheeler Racing, having to go back to the drawing board for a tough race. James Pallett finished off in 14th place, just ahead of 4 laps down for Robin Noel Brown, who in the end was retired from the race, but he was classified as a finisher despite the disqualification, so it'll be interesting to see whether he is awarded the points or not. I suspect he may not be, because he received an official disqualification. And then we did see Danny Phillips, Jack Wyborn, Ryan Stringer, Martin Kenyon and Chris Keenan complete the top 20, all as non-finishers, no points coming their way, and the same as well for Victor Van Zeest, Steve Nicks and also Noah Kelly, the first to retire from the race in GT4. That completes our rundown, ladies and gentlemen, of the results, subject to any Stewards inquiries, and it completes our racing for today on this broadcast. But it doesn't quite complete the show, because coming up in approximately 5 minutes time, we'll be posting around interviews with our volunteer drivers. So don't go anywhere. You won't miss what our drivers have got to say across our classes about the racing here today at the Miami International Autodrome, and also their achievements in the changing conditions. We'll be back as soon as we can.
For the upcoming right-hander, brake 30 meters later and ease off the pressure.
If you've enjoyed today's racing and are sat there right now asking yourself, well, how do I get on the grid at SimRacing International and become part of the fun, fast and furious racing action? Well, it's quite easy to do. All you need to do is join the official SimRacing International Discord. Invite link at the bottom of your screen. And in doing so, well, you can get on the grid for any of our ongoing and upcoming series. Ongoing currently, we have our Thursday evening GT3 Championship run on a weekly basis with 2 splits. 60 drives in each split, 120 drives in total. Indeed, whether you're a rookie all the way through to a veteran, you'll find competition there without a doubt. And the same extends to all of our other ongoing series, including, for those who prefer to race on weekends, the UK SimRacing Sunday Showdown, dedicated to GT3 machines as well, running every Sunday evening. Plenty of fast and furious racing action just before you go into the next week ahead. But if you're a big fan of GTE machines, much missed since their retirement in 2023, don't you Friday evenings? Alternatively, you're looking to go for the very best of our prize and offer. We do have our all-new Motorsport UK eSports approved championship. It is the Transatlantic Trophy in its inaugural season, dedicated for its opening season to Bruce McLaren's wonderful machines, the McLaren 720S GT3 Evo and the McLaren 570S GT4, and that runs every 2 weeks on Wednesday evenings. But if you're looking for something far more casual, perhaps you're just looking to dip your toes in and meet some like-minded individuals in the sim racing space, well, we do have our practice league that runs every week, multiple free races on alternating days. So there's something for everybody here at SimRacing International, whether you're an esports professional all the way through to a rookie racer. So don't delay, get yourself signed up to the Discord today and get yourself on the grid. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it's about time for us to get our interviews underway. And well, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for us to kick off our post-round interviews. And what better way to start off than with our winner from today in the GT3 class, because we're coming to none other than Marley Joff for our first interview of the day. And let's hear what he's got to say on what's been an absolutely epic round of racing, no doubt about it, as he now does join me in the interview room. And we say hello and good evening to Marley Joff. Marley, good evening to you. What a round for yourself. After the disappointment of Indianapolis, this must feel like a breath of fresh air, and most importantly, a first win on the board.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was pretty disappointing going out in the way I did at Indy. Unfortunately, I was having problems up to that event as well, so it didn't really surprise me. But yeah, this was a tricky round. Tricky round in the mixed conditions. It was tricky managing the traffic as well. Got very tight in some parts of the circuit, so had to exercise a bit of patience. But after pulling out such a lead that I did at the start, it was just about managing the gap towards the end and managing the fuel and not bonking anyone off that didn't need to be. So it was good fun though, really, really good fun.
Oh, 100%. I mean, it sounds like you've had plenty of fun, but talking about qualifying, I mean, a monster pole lap from yourself. I do believe I just double-checked the statistics. The best part of 6 tenths faster than what anybody else was able to achieve. Was it one lap magic, or did you just naturally feel that confident?
I mean, before that I had a 0.3, so I think I was fairly comfortable. I had a bit of practice around here at the beginning of the season, so you know, it didn't take long to translate that to the McLaren. So yeah, just hooked it all up in the end.
Well, all hooked up very nicely in qualifying. And then as to the race, now, we did see you get a good start and gradually make the break as you tried to do at Indianapolis, but here it worked out just that little bit better. There was the risk of rain, of course, that would come somewhere around 30 minutes into the race. It did come a bit earlier, 25 minutes in. Were you surprised by that, or do you just simply think, okay, plan A, which is we survive it, we go to the wet tyre and just carry on?
I wasn't necessarily surprised by it. I knew it was coming. It didn't really matter if it was 25 minutes in or 30 minutes in. The difficult thing to judge was how much fuel to put in the middle of it, making sure that, because I knew it was going to stop quite quickly. So it was all about making sure I put the right amount of fuel in so that I wasn't over-fueling the car, but I also had enough in reserve to make it towards the end, and I was fuel saving towards the end there to make sure I got to the end. But yeah, it was tricky around here. It was very, very slippy, and I mean, I'm sure you'll see on the broadcast that a lot of people had problems there. So yeah, that's all it was in the end. Just making sure I got the fuel right and keeping it out the wall.
Oh, indeed. Tricky, like you say, and added to that, the situation whereby you have to find your way past GT4s lap per lap. I mean, that must have complicated things even further.
Yeah, a lot. They definitely like to form a roadblock from time to time, especially during the fiddly chicane bit. So there was a lot of patience involved, and especially when you switched over to the dries. Like, you have to remind yourself constantly, do not get off the dry line when you're overtaking these guys, especially during the first few laps when tires are cold. You have to be very what's the right word, diligent in the lines that you're taking. So the rain always adds a bit of complication to the mix. Yeah, it was a good challenge. It was a really good challenge.
Oh, most definitely. You rose the challenge in the end, and bringing home that first win that alluded you at Indianapolis. Well, it's a great start to your season now, albeit a bit of a race delayed, if you will, and we've got plenty more rounds to come. Next up is none other than Sonoma. What can we expect from you there?
I love Sonoma. I absolutely love it. Great memories from Gran Turismo 4. If you ever remember the track on there, there's also Mission 33, infamous Mission 33.
Oh no, don't give me PTSD.
I remember doing that with my dad, and we would spend hours trying to get through that. So yeah, lots of good memories. I'm really looking forward to it.
Does that mean, given your memories of Gran Turismo 4, for you it's not Sonoma Raceway, it'll always be known as the Infineon Raceway instead?
Yes. You are absolutely right. I remember looking at Sonoma the first time thinking, what is that? And then I looked at the layout, I was like, hang on a minute, I know that. So yeah, for sure, Infineon, Sonoma, yeah, definitely be Infineon for me.
Oh, fantastic. Well, whether it's to Infineon or beyond, or in this case, Sonoma, we look forward to seeing what you can do with regards to trying to make it 2 in a row when we head to California in 2 weeks' time. But just before we do let you go, Marley, is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast?
So, firstly, I want to give a massive shout out to Danny, who's our reserve driver. Came in really with very little prep. You've never driven the GT4 until yesterday, so it was a big learning curve for him, but he unfortunately didn't quite go the way he wanted it to this evening, but up to the rain he was doing a fantastic job. Of course, I want to thank SimCoach for allowing me to work with them, and for for being good to me, and all the people that are involved with SimCoach being good to me as well. So yeah, hopefully on for bigger and better things in the future.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I'm glad to hear you're grateful to the SimCoach team and you're able to work so comfortably with them. And, well, you've definitely worked at a treat today, Marley. I think everyone will agree with me on that one. A phenomenal win, the first of what could be potentially many as we go on in the season. We'll have to wait and see. But until then, congratulations on your victory here in Miami. Have a wonderful rest of your evening, and we'll catch you in 2 weeks in the Sonoma circuit.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the broadcast. I'll be watching it afterwards.
It's my pleasure.
Cheers. Bye.
So here and there, ladies and gentlemen, from Marley Joff, very happy with today. And I did like the way he broke that down in the fact, with regards to his pole time, already 3 attempts ahead early on and realising as a result that he was destined to go for pole position. So the 6 attempts in a way was really him being able to flex what he could do and, well, making up for the delta of what was the disappointment of Indianapolis. In the race, didn't put a foot wrong. And so out there, whether the rain came 25 minutes in or 30 minutes in, it didn't matter to him. The bigger concern was making sure he saved the fuel to be able to get to the end of the race correctly without being pinched on fuel right at the end. And did so with aplomb. But also talking about the fact that having to pass the GT4s added to the challenge, plus the wet conditions, and he thrived in the conditions. And well, credit where it's due to him. Many would say when you're leading by that margin that perhaps the race goes a bit stale, but not for Marley Joff. Find himself having to be alert, attentive, and make sure he got everything absolutely right, particularly with those wet lines out there on slick tyres, always proving dangerous. But very pleased with his win, and it's off to the Infineon Raceway, as he always remember it, how it used to be known before it got returned to the Sonoma Raceway name. We'll talk more about the history of the name of our venue, what will be our next broadcast in 2 weeks' time. But can Marley Joff make it 2 wins in the opening 3 rounds, and with it potentially 3 pole positions on the trot? We'll have to wait and see. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we've spoken to our first interviewee, and well, very shortly we're going to be getting our second interview underway, because we've had 1 chat already and we've got more to come. And I think coming up next we're going to the GT4 class, and indeed we are, because as we do go to GT4, bear with us a brief moment. Well, we are now going to be catching up with this man, Brandon Dyer, as he gets ready to join me in the interview room, and I think he is going to now, and let's hear what he's got to say. As unfortunately we do have a bit of a glitch there with regards to what's on screen, so let's just have a quick chat with Brandon Dyer and hear what he's got to say about his achievements today. And so we now catch up with Brandon Dye. Apologies for a slight delay bringing you in, Brandon. Don't worry, we dragged you in here. You've got nothing to worry about. Congratulations today on taking what was a superb victory, although you had to work hard for it in the GT4 class.
Yeah, it was a tricky race. I think Ace and the strategy was definitely lucky because I think the guy that got past a lot quicker than me today. So I think I got a little bit lucky, but yeah, I'm pretty happy with the win.
Well, you're right to be happy with the win, to be fair to you, because given the way Marinko Jornowski was close in the late stages, like you say, he did seem to have a bit of an advantage on pace, but you made the right calls on strategy. However, let's talk a little bit about qualifying firstly. In the end, managing what was 5th in qualifying. Were you happy with your qualifying lap?
I know I could go a little bit faster, but to be honest, I think in these sort of races, as long as you're in the top like 5 or 6, you're in for a chance at the win, really. So I was happy with it and not happy with it at the same time because I was there or thereabouts because I think I got up to P2 after lap 3 or 4. So yeah, I was pretty happy with the qualifying.
Well, happy with your qualifying lap, and then going into the race, that translated quite nicely. And we did see you make some bold moves early on to try and progress your way up through the field.
Yeah, I had some good battles. I'm not too keen on Miami, but I must admit the side-by-side battles were quite enjoyable when I had them. So, and everyone gave racing room, which was good to see as well.
Well, plenty of racing room being given, but of course, it wasn't just a battle on circuit. We also saw plenty of battling with the weather conditions. And in the end, the rain came and you immediately ducked in to go to the wet tyres.
Yeah, I didn't do too much practice, but I realised that even with the short weather period, that the dry tyres wouldn't last. And to be honest, I just wanted to play it safe, get on the right tyre quickly and try and avoid crashing on the slicks on a wet track, which seemed to work out for me because I had a 20-second gap, I think, after everyone made their pit stop. So yeah, I think I made the right call there.
Oh, most definitely would agree with you on that one. And were you aware at the time that Marinko Jornowski had stayed out for an extra 3 laps on the slick tyre? Or when did you find out that perhaps he had got it wrong on strategy?
I know he stayed out, and after about 2 laps, it was really wet. And I was like, I thought he was just going to commit to the dry tyres until the sun came back out. And then I saw him 20 seconds behind me, and then I must admit I was pretty happy with that because I knew he was quicker than me, to be honest.
Now, you may have been happy at that point, but did you also start to get the creeping thought, as we all do as racers, even at a professional level such as yourself at Altitude 3M, where you think to yourself, okay, but is he now catching me?
I didn't notice, but there was one point in the race where I lost concentration for a minute and I missed my braking point, and I think I lost about 10 or 12 seconds. Yeah, having a 12-hour shift, coming home and jumping straight on the sim rigs, that was a long race, so I'm definitely ready for bed after this interview.
Oh, goodness me. Well, we won't keep you too long away from the bliss of sleep. And that explains we were going to come on to what happened at the hairpin. So tiredness kicking in, that's absolutely fair. But you held on in the end by less than a second to take your first win of the season. I mean, you must have been, well, for all the energy you had left, you must have been ecstatic when you crossed the line.
Yeah, it definitely felt a lot longer than an hour and a half. I think the last half an hour felt twice as long as the first hour being out there by myself. But I'm glad it's over, and I'm definitely happy that I won because Miami's definitely not my strongest track. So I really can't complain about my performance tonight.
Well, of course, up next is Sonoma in 2 weeks' time. Dry conditions, we're back to a 1-hour race. What can we expect from you there?
Sonoma's probably one of my favourite tracks, so I don't want to big myself up too much, but I hope I have the pace there. But it's a very enjoyable track to drive for me, so I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, fantastic. Well, we're looking forward to seeing you out there, giving it your all in what will be 2 weeks' time to see if you can make it 2 wins on the bounce. But just before we let you go, Brandon, is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to?
Thanks to my team, 3M Altitude eSports, and Joey as well, because after he made a couple of mistakes, he spotted me for the last bit of the race, and he was a good hand to have. So yeah, thanks, Joey.
Ah, well, Joey definitely coming in handy there as your spotter and got him to stick around and help out. Brandon, we'll leave it there. Congratulations on your first win of the season. We won't keep you any longer. Go get some sleep, good sir, and well done once again.
Thanks, Paul. Take care. Cheers, mate.
So hearing that from a tired but a very happy Brandon Dyer, ladies and gentlemen, for Altitude at 3M eSports. And well, in the end today, talking about the fact that in qualifying he was happy initially with the lap he was able to put together, which did take him to second place, only to then see him obviously demoted down to fifth place as time went on in the session, but he was well within earshot of the lead group. Now he did think that Marinko Jornovsky had a pace advantage, however, as he admitted there, the fact that he came in immediately to go to the wet tyre and saw that Marinko had gone too long in the slick tyre, it gave him the confidence that he'd be able to take lead and potentially run with it. Only to discover late on that he had a 20-second gap that was coming down. However, it was a lapse of concentration due to tiredness that in the end saw him go very deep at the hairpin and lose 10 of those 20 seconds and give Jornovsky the lifeline needed to potentially go back on the attack. It didn't quite work out that way for Jornovsky, losing out on the final lap by 6/10 of a second at line, but goodness needed Brandon Dyer put it all on the line, and he did so admirably. And with a bit more sleep and a bit more confidence at a circuit he enjoys, Sonoma, could we see him make it 2 from 2? Because if he can win at Miami, a circuit that he doesn't enjoy or is as strong at as perhaps he would like to be, well, understandably at Sonoma, a circuit he does enjoy a lot more and feels stronger at, the Altitude 3M driver could have some surprises in store for us all. Well, great catching up with him, no doubt about it. And we've now got 1 or 2 more interviews to come, ladies and gentlemen, and next up we are going back to the GT3 class. But who exactly we're going to be speaking to? We're going to be speaking to this man, and joining me very shortly in the interview room is none other than Charlie Devlin. Let's bring him on in. And as we welcome into the interview room once again, Charlie, good evening to you. Not quite the win today, not the highs, let's say, of what was Indianapolis 2 weeks ago, but a second place and a championship lead held on to at least for the time being. An impressive result.
Obviously incredibly happy with my performance today. Obviously just keep on going along, bagging the points, getting the podiums. That's kind of the main goal. Obviously Ryan didn't have it very easy today, which is what I like to call suboptimal. But you know, it is what it is. It happens. We'll come back to next round. Obviously, just try and score as many points for the team. Obviously, a win is a bonus, but just bagging the points, getting on the podium, just being up there all of the time, not having incidents. That's the way to kind of lead these championships.
Oh, 100%. Like you say, bagging the points first and foremost, and a championship isn't won on what is just a single result. It can make the difference, but it does come down to consistency. You've got plenty of that. Now, qualifying-wise, second fastest in qualifying. I don't think anybody was beating Marley Joff today in qualifying, given the 6/10 gap, but you were the best of the rest. Were you happy with your lap?
Say happy. Obviously happy to be second. I think I could have been closer to Marley. I think beating him wasn't really on the cards, to be honest. He's just absolutely crazy quick. So yeah, happy to be P2. Obviously the start didn't really go to plan. I ran a little bit wide, but yeah, just kind of kept my composure, kept with it. Just made myself back to second for the rain phase. Obviously that got incredibly tricky with kind of tyres wise, fuel wise, time loss wise. So yeah, the strategy worked out pretty well. I lost quite a bit of race time, say, across the race. So the race pace I was actually really happy with, but I made quite a few mistakes, either with my pit lap, just kind of silly stuff like that, kind of on the out lap, going a little bit deep in places. So I lost quite a little bit of race time, which could have ultimately cost me the win today. But again, yeah, just happy to be P2, happy to get the points.
Oh, fair play to you. And I do like the fact you've already analysed to a degree where you have made the mistakes and where you've lost time, where you've gained it and such forth. And I think that's a sign of somebody really, as a driver, like you mentioned right at the start, they're thinking about the bigger picture all the time. Now, I have to ask, with the wet weather conditions, it was a very short period for the rain. Was there no thought of perhaps I can survive it on the slick tyre?
I started to think that kind of in the first kind of 2 or 3 laps, so it started to drizzle at kind of the west side of the circuit, kind of over where the tricky little chicane is. But the rest of the circuit was still dry, so I kind of stayed out, kind of lost 2 or 3 seconds through there, but stayed out because the lap was still quicker on a dry tyre. I think Marley hit 3 or 4 laps before me, and I was still gaining time on him. And then it got to a stage where it was raining around the whole track, and through that kind of tight little chicane snaky bit, it just became basically undrivable. So I just thought it's not really worth the risk. So I just came in, put the wets on. Maybe in hindsight, it might have been better to stay out, but obviously we'll never know. But yeah, just minimising the risk. Again, kind of just staying with the flow, keep the points rolling in. So yeah, just kind of minimising the risk whilst maximising the result at the same time.
Oh, and fair play to you for doing so. I think it was the right call at the end of the day. I have to ask as well, obviously, as the race went towards its end, the gap between yourself and Marley Joff quite considerable, and the same from those behind you, such as Harvey Wheeler. Were you able to back yourself off at all, or did you have to keep your concentration level at maximum?
Kind of, you got to keep your concentration and awareness there. Obviously, your GT4s can be unpredictable at times, but I tried to make my way through best I could, and kind of just trying to be predictable for them, for anything too audacious. Because at the end of the day, the leader was 15 seconds up the road, so it was obviously going to be an absolute struggle to get anywhere close. So yeah, just minimising the risk. I knew Marley was a little bit slower in the wet. I kind of found out I was kind of a lap quicker, but it just dried up too quickly. Yeah, if there's a full wet racing coming, which I hope there is at some point, I could be looking at a very strong result coming towards that round, whichever it may be.
Well, you never know what's on the cards for the other mixed conditions rounds, but we will reveal that closer to the time when they do come about. But a solid second added to a win for Indianapolis. You lead the way going into round 3. Next up, Sonoma. How are you feeling for it?
I'm not going to lie to you. I've never even heard of it. I've never seen a lap round it. Never driven a lap round it. Never driven anything around it. So, yeah, that's going to be a struggle. But obviously, get the head down with a little bit of preparation going into that round. Just maximising the result, really. If that's going to be my lowest score, we'll just have to, again, minimise the losses, kind of stay within that podium range if that's where it's going to play out. But again, not going to do anything too outrageous to kind of keep myself at the front. If people are faster, they can by all means come past. I'm just there to do the what I like to call the Colin Turkington of championship, just kind of bag the points as you go along. You haven't got to be too audacious or anything with carry any risk. If you get taken out, that could be your championship wiped away as soon as anything. So yeah, just picking the points up where we can across all the races, try just to be as consistent as physically possible.
Oh, fair play. And I'm loving the reference to Colin Turkington and that real approach there about the points. And I mean, I do have to just briefly do a quick detour. You've raced recently as part of the BMW 116 Cup. I mean, are you drawing more upon that experience over the most recent weekend into your sim racing?
Of course. Sim and real life are very kind of close together. I think we've seen that with people like Chris Lullum, who go through Max Verstappen's kind of sim program. He's jumped straight into the Max's GT3s and he's won the gold championship. He now drives as a pro driver for Max's team, and they're obviously, of course, right at the front of the championship. So it definitely shows that sim to real world is very, very close. Obviously, things like E-forces and stuff like that can never be 100% replicated. I think that's where the sim kind of misses out. But 100% your skills are transversable between real life and the sim. Obviously, going into a race weekend, I'll take the things from the sim to the real life, and the things that I learn in real life I'll put towards the sim, just to kind of develop myself as a driver. Obviously, just moving forward as much as I can. Obviously, I want to be as quick as I can in the sim and in real life. So to put those skills together, it makes for an absolutely wonderful combo, and it's really, really helped me out in certain scenarios.
Oh, 100%. Really appreciate the insights there of the linkage between real life and the simulator. And just before we do let you go, Charlie, as always, is there anyone you want to give a shout out to or a thank you on the broadcast?
Just a massive shout out to mum and dad, family downstairs that are watching, Kat as well, of course. Sponsor Future Gas for sponsoring myself and Ryan for the series. And then also a massive shout out for Dan at Simfinity, who's watching along as well. Obviously a very, very chaotic evening for him to watch my first sim race as well. So yeah, just a massive shout out for him for noticing me throughout my journey. And it's much appreciated.
Well, we appreciate, as always, having the opportunity to catch up with you, Charlie, and congratulations today on taking your second podium of the season, a solid conversion of second place in qualifying to the second place spot on the podium. We look forward to seeing you learn and take on the test of Sonoma in 2 weeks' time. But until then, go celebrate making it onto the podium, and we'll catch you again in round number 3.
Thank you.
So here now, ladies and gentlemen, from Charlie Devlin, really seeing the bigger picture perspective as always with regards to his approach. And I do like the fact he is already really thinking. You could hear that spirit, a Colin Turkington-esque style approach to the racing, which is knowing that you need the results across the season, not just one or two that will make you a champion. And well, also knowing, of course, a bit of a gap today between him and Marley Joff, and that perhaps he could have done better. He could have perhaps taken a different strategic approach, but he did everything he could right to make sure he guaranteed himself solid points. And well, it's not lied in the fact that right now he leads the way, and at Sonoma, if he can keep up the podium streak, he's definitely going to be somebody very difficult to unseat from the top, even if Joff does make it 2 in a row next time out. But he'll be able to keep that podium streak going, or perhaps make it a second win of the season. We'll find out then. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we make our way back to the GT4 class now for our next interview. And, well, coming up next, I do believe we're not quite catching up with our second place finisher in GT4. Instead, we're going to be catching up with one of the drivers who fished a little bit further down. In fact, I believe it is going to be none other than Alex Fretwell we come to, as we now get the opportunity to catch up with the Quench 9 Pegasus Pan for a very crushed driver, as he does join me in the interview room. And as we say hello to Alex, and thank you to him for waiting. Alex, good evening to you. And, well, what a changing day it's been today. But to be fair to you, 12th in qualifying, 5th at the finish, and almost with a chance of a spot on the podium as well. It's not all bad in Miami.
Yeah, it was hard work. Obviously a long old race. I've not been feeling 100% either, so it's definitely a sweat fest. Almost got there to P3 at the end. Pace was really strong in that final stint. I thought at one point it was going to happen, but just ran out of time and a little bit unlucky with traffic in the final few laps. But no, P5, I'll take that. Very good result.
Now, of course, that naturally brings me on to the next question. Qualifying, that 12th place, was that a lap you were able to extract from the car then, or was there a lot more on the table that you didn't get to show us?
It was pretty much where I was at that point. Came in pretty blind. Only got back in the country yesterday, so straight into it. And that, like I say, that was where I was at that point. First stint as well. I was still sort of finding pace here and there. And then obviously the wet stint was a little bit survival. Started making a little bit of progress, and then it all really came together on the final stint. Found a lot of time. That was probably the most enjoyable of the sort of 3 phases.
Oh, fair play. The time kept coming to you, and that final stint, like you say, really where you were thriving. obviously, when the wet weather did come, it was only for a short period of time. Had you already mentally thought to yourself, I'm coming in for the wet tyres regardless, or was there a little question in your mind, though, do I stay out?
Yeah, obviously the rain wasn't forecast for very long, but I think it's always sort of longer than you think. It doesn't tend to dry out that quick, even with the amount of cars on track. So yeah, I knew it was always almost certainly going to be a wet stint, and then took it fairly long, to be honest, longer than a lot of the cars around me to go back to the slicks. Just wanted to be sort of really confident on getting out and getting up to temperature, which worked out pretty well. Getting a couple of places, I think, on that final stop. And yeah, then sort of came out of the pits knowing that I had to sort of nail it straight away, get up to speed. And yeah, the time just kept dropping. I think there were phases where I was just about the quickest GT4. There were one or two, obviously, that kept putting in a quick lap. But yeah, really strong in that final stint. And yeah, probably gained myself, I don't know, 3-4 places in that last stint.
Oh, most definitely. And well, I'm just checking through these statistics right now, and I think you can give yourself an even bigger pat on the back. You were matching the pace of every driver minus Marinko Jornowski, who was only slightly quicker than you, but otherwise you were the second fastest at the time, and it's no wonder you're able to gain those places. But of course, looking at the other end of the spectrum, we've spoken to GT3 drivers and discussed how they had to try and find their way past GT4s. What was it like as a GT4 driver? Because I can imagine, particularly in the wet conditions, it really was hold your line. Do not give the GT3 any other space other than the rest of the circuit. They've got to go to the wet, not you.
Yeah, there were a couple of sketchy places, sort of through 9 and 10, which I think is meant to be a straight, but in the wet in a GT4 with this weight and power setting, it really wasn't a straight at all. It was a proper corner for us. And yeah, some of the GT3s through there, obviously we're going to the right hand side, and you're thinking, mate, I need all that space, because if I'm not lifting, I'm going over there. And then there were a couple of times, sort of 4, 5, 6, where they were sort of coming around the outside of us in the mid corner, which you just have to be aware of. Obviously, it's always that tricky thing that the slower class is meant to maintain the line, but when you've got a combination of corners, there's always going to be some sort of switchback. So yeah, there were a few tricky bits, but to be fair, most of it was pretty decent. And obviously there's the start finish straight and that last back straight where a lot of them managed to find the way through. But no, it was pretty decent. It was no major complaints.
Oh, fair play. No complaints from yourself. We did see you in the end just fall slightly short of that podium, but still a sign of things to come, perhaps, with that top 5 finish. A good set of points coming in, and next up we make our way to Sonoma for dry conditions in round number 3. Are you a fan of Sonoma?
I'd love to say yes. I haven't got a clue. I'll find out when we get there.
Oh, fair play. Well, you'll be in the pool of several drivers, I do believe, who need to learn Sonoma or get familiarised with yourself, so you won't be alone in that regard. But just before we do let you go, Alex, is there anyone you'd like to give a thank you or a shout out to on the broadcast?
Just everyone involved with putting this together, as always, and obviously all the lads at 9PP as well. Slowly starting to put things together, and might be seeing us on Thursdays going forward as well in the not too distant future. So yeah, building, and yeah, thanks to the team for all the support.
Oh, fantastic. We'd definitely love to see yourself and the team join the grid on Thursdays in our other championships here at SimRacing International as well. But until then, congratulations today on turning around the 12th place in qualifying into a top 5 and almost a podium. You're absolutely sensational in that final stint, and we look forward to even more at Sonoma. But until then, be proud of your achievements today and have a lovely rest of your evening.
Yeah, thank you.
So here in there, ladies and gentlemen, for Alex Fretwell, not feeling 100% coming into this round, and well, in the end, absolutely going to town with regards to his performance, although admitting there the fact he was learning as he went. And what's very interesting result, I do like the fact when he compared his qualifying points to later on, saying that qualifying lap was the best he could do at the time. So really giving me that context, which is every lap he was doing, qualifying, the race, he was learning. And that final stint, well, the lap times don't lie. Marinko Jornowski was lapping typically around a 203.8. Alex Fretwell, a 204.9. 204.4, Brandon Dyer a 204.7 with the averages, and so it shows you how quick he was in the drying conditions. And well, you can imagine if there was 1 or 2 more laps, he may have had a really good chance at third place. Unfortunately, it wasn't to be, although we did see him get stuck into the fighting early on as well. So Alex Fretwell was always going to be a staple of the battling, and we're going to see plenty of excitement, no doubt about it, as the season goes on from our Quench 9PP Berry Crush driver. But will we be able to crush the competition for podium finishes? That's what we need to see at Sonoma. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we've got one more interview to come before we wrap up today's broadcast. And well, without further ado, we are going to be making our way, I do believe, to none other than what is another one of our GT4 drivers, and we're going to catch up with this man, Ryan Stringer, to complete our interviews as we bring him into the interview room. And so as he joins me now, Ryan, good evening to you. A tough day in the office today for yourself after a decent qualifying performance, but it all went wrong as the weather started to change.
Yeah, the pace was really, really good. Yeah, just got caught out with a few mishaps early on in the dry, and then yeah, got launched round by a car, and then had a slight mishap in the pit lane, which ruined my day.
Oh, indeed. And well, we definitely caught what happened in the pit lane, unfortunately, on the broadcast, you'll find. So that's there for archival purposes now. But let's talk about more positives. Qualifying, 6th place in the end in a very tight field outside of our pole sitter.
Yeah, I mean, I had the pace to be with Janowski, which is really annoying because, like I said, with Indy, it's so difficult to get that one lap. And I mean, here the pace difference into corners has made a massive issue when it comes to qualifying. So after down the bottom of the back straight, the wiggly back straight, you're braking at just before the bridge, about 200 meters, whereas the GT3s are 150 to like 100 braking zone. So they're going to close into you massively. And it was all about getting the gap about 12 seconds before you start your lap, just to get that clear gap. And it just made it really difficult. And I think Janowski just got very lucky with the timing of cars around him.
I see. Well, sometimes drivers are fortunate, some are not. Definitely not fortunate for yourself today. But of course, that's where the race sees you try to make up the ground. Although the open lap, unfortunately, did not work out the way you wanted it to.
Yeah, no. I don't know what happened. I know the car that was alongside me on the left ended up on the inside of me into T1. So it caused a massive crash for, I think, 4 or 5 drivers, which pushed me from 6th all the way down to, I think, 11th at one point. So, yeah, it was just picking him off one at a time. I got back up to, I think, P3. I was chasing down Brandon, and then the rain came, and I missed out slightly on the stop time.
Oh, I see. Well, with the rain arriving and the stop time, what influenced when you would come into the pit lane?
I actually hit the barrier on the left-hand side of the little chicane, which you're probably going to see what I'm on about on the broadcast. So yeah, it wasn't great, and then I had like sort of like a 45-degree angle for the rest of the lap. I thought I'll give it another lap, see how bad it is. Lost a load of time, and I thought, yeah, I'm going to go and get the repair done, use the fast repair, which unfortunately I shouldn't have done, because after that I got hit from about 7 car lengths back, which ended up putting me backwards and playing like 15 minutes of repair.
Oh, it was very unfortunate with regards to that contact with another driver, but really at the end of the day you could only get out of it what you could from that point onwards, and not many points coming out of Miami, but we're past this round. We've got plenty more rounds to come. Next up is Sonoma. How are you feeling for a trip to California?
Sonoma's a track that I haven't done any GT4 driving on. To be fair, Miami I've not done any GT4 driving either. But I found with the setup changes that we've had, it's made the car a little bit more understandable when it comes to like on the braking and how much you can use. So there's fine tweaks that obviously the sim coach guys are slowly doing. So I'm hoping that there'll be some tweaks made for Sonoma, and it will be a bit better to drive and make it a little bit more consistent for us, because it's, yeah, I mean, we had a massive amount of understeer today, so I'm hoping it gets sorted, because the S's at Sonoma will be a massive issue if we we carry on with this understeer issue. But yeah, Sonoma's probably gonna be a decent race. Hopefully I can get back to the top 3, and hopefully I can I can get Janowski or Brandon.
Oh, well, that's what we'd definitely love to see. We want you back up on the podium, but not languishing with damage in the pit lane. I can definitely agree with you on that one, Ryan. But just before we do let you go, is there anyone you'd like to give a mention or a shout out to on the broadcast?
I will give a shout out to the missus, the kids that are asleep, my dad who has been watching my racing recently, the sponsors of Future Glass that have so gracefully sponsored the likes of me and Charlie for this series, my sponsor Anti Rip Rip Club for helping fund a possible racing season next year, and yeah, all the guys that are helping run the series, from the stewards to yourself and James, and then the sim coach guys that are slowly finding the issues with the car and making it better round by round.
Oh, fantastic, Ryan. Well, it's been great to catch up with yourself. And sorry it didn't work out the way you wanted it to today, but surely some better luck will come your way at Sonoma. We hope to see that happen there in 2 weeks' time. But until then, thank you for joining me once again, and have a lovely rest of your evening.
You too.
So hearing that, ladies and gentlemen, from understandably Ace, frustrated to a degree, but still happy to talk to us, Ryan Stringer. And the Future Class Racing driver today, talking out there, again, like at Indianapolis in qualifying, if he could just get that one good lap in, he reckons he would be able to put himself right alongside, not ahead of Rinko Jornowski. And he's made that statement twice right now. And I don't think he's fibbing. I don't think he's beating himself up. I think he could do it. But that is the problem when you do have so many cars out of the circuit altogether. But it is the same for everybody. And we saw that discourse, of course, a little bit in the YouTube chat earlier on, in regards to the fact when you do have multi-class qualifying, everyone's out there together. But in the end, well, you got to go with what you got. And for Ryan Stringer, it's 2 out of 2 so far, where it hasn't quite worked out as planned. However, at the start of the race, it will go from good to bad to disaster very quickly. That open lap incident that would send him turned around and see him dropped all the way to the back of the field. He would fight his way forward, but unfortunately, a bit of a moment with pit lane entry, plus also, well, a bit of a moment that forced him to pit early with the chicane, plus also what was an incident subsequently after leaving the pit lane, has meant that his race ended up in tears. But still, he's got a positive spirit on him and looking to try and keep pushing on, no doubt about it. And also constantly giving feedback to the team at SimCoach on the setup for the GT4. Well, he's definitely got the attitude right, which is he wants to go on the attack and he wants to try and steal away that win from Brandon Dyer and Rinko Jornowski at Sonoma. But will he be able to do so? We'll find out in 2 weeks' time. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our interviews for today. We've had 5 interviews of a variety of drivers. We should apologise for our graphics glitch at the start of the interviews. It's an issue that we are aware of now, and we'll look to get resolved ahead of our next broadcast in round number 3. We had to go to a bit of a plan B there, rather than showing you the drivers' photos and the liveries on screen and their logos with it. But still, we have been able to improvise, and we carry on, as we always do here at SimRacing International. And with that, it is now time for us to look ahead to next time. And speaking of which, next time out, we make our way to none other than Sonoma Raceway, the circuit once known as Infinium Raceway, and previously before that Sears Point Raceway. But regardless of the name and its tumultuous history, it is the Californian circuit just outside of San Francisco that is packed full of elevation changes, sweeping bends, and with it, some decisive places where overtakes are possible, but otherwise it could be a very tricky circuit to get right, whether it be in a qualifying lap or in the midst of a leading fight. And so the story will continue on Wednesday, the 9th of September for round number 3 of 10, but that's all we've got time for today here in Miami. And next up will be our 60-minute race as we return to dry conditions, and things should be a bit more settled, but will things be settled at the very front of the field? That's what I have to say now that we have had, of course, 2 different winners in both our classes over the first 2 rounds, but some regular names returning to the podium, no doubt about it. But just before we do step away, we'd like to say a big thank you once again to our sponsors for this season, and that does include none other than trophi.ai, our championship sponsor, our title sponsor. And indeed, check out their free 7-day trial if you want to get up to speed and get yourself coached by the very best AI learning machine you can. And that's at www.trophi.ai, and a huge thank you to Trophy AI for sponsoring our championship. We'd also like to say a big thank you to CarMate Modern Technology, our official trophy provider for this season. Much appreciated as always from them with their absolutely brilliant trophies. Also to Sim Coach, where you unlock your true potential with human coaching there. And indeed, whether you're looking to gain tenths or entire seconds, or to learn how to be a bit more consistent, Sim Coach can definitely help you out if you're looking to get the right setup on the car. Indeed, they've got the right setups on our cars for this championship season, and we really do appreciate their input for our GT3 and GT4 machines. And of course, we must give a huge thank you to Motorsport UK's eSports division, not just for recognising us at SimRacing International as a recommended community, of which we're very grateful and long may it continue throughout 2026, but also for approving our championship and giving it that special status. And we're very grateful to have that status, which allows us to run it with even stricter stewarding, and indeed the closest possible stewarding you can have to a Motorsport UK event in real life motorsport. And also it does mean that we can broadcast this series for you on the Motorsport UK eSports official YouTube channel. And thank you to those of you who have been tuning in via that means. Alternatively, if you've been tuning in via the SimRacing International YouTube channel, a big thank you to you regardless of where you tuned in from. We must also give a shout out to Mr. Hedge Photography, of course, for his brilliant photography. Adam Hedgecock, absolute superstar behind the camera, and we always do appreciate it. And a huge contributor to the photos available to our drivers after each and every round, and of course, the thumbnails used for our broadcast. But as we say, with that, it's time to look ahead. And well, it will be Sonoma Raceway, 2 weeks' time, Wednesday, the 9th of September. Our story continues with a 60-minute race there in the US state of California. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, we have been SimRacing International. You've been tuning to Season 1 of the Transatlantic Trophy. And until next time, stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, like our drivers, remember to stay on track. Good night.
For the upcoming right-hander, brake 30 meters later and ease off the pressure.